from both of those meetings carried? Carried, thank you. All right, we're going to go through the agenda and see if there are any that we can carry on consent. Some of these have presentations and some of these items have delegations. Item 4.1, we have a presentation from staff and a delegation, so we'll hold item 4.1. Item 5.1 is capital adjustments and closing of projects transit commission. There are no delegations. Are there any requests from commission members to hold this item?
Yeah.
Hold that item. Is it a quick question, Councillor? Is it detailed?
Yeah, I think it's detailed.
Okay, then we will hold that item. Item 5.2 is delegation of authority, contracts awarded for the period of July 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022 for Transit Commission. There's no presentation and no delegations registered. Any requests to hold this item? Okay, I'm seeing none. So are the, is the report received? Received, thank you. Item 6.1, customer marketing and readiness campaign for stage 2 O-train extensions. We will hold this. There's a staff presentation. And item 6.2 is transit services 5-year roadmap. There is a presentation and we also have 2 speakers registered for 6.2, so we'll hold that. Item 7.1 is the Piot Spring Summit 2023. This is a report from Councillor Lowe on his trip to the Spring Summit in Saskatoon. Any requests to hold this item, or Councillor Lowe, do you wish to speak on it? No? All right. It's a very good report. I'd highly recommend people read that. Good summary of the meeting. So is this item received? Received. Thank you. Okay, so that takes us through the consent agenda. We'll go back to the beginning, and the first item we held was 4.1, the OC Transpo update for rail, bus, and paratranspo. Before I hand it over to René, avant de commencer, je tiens à féliciter.
Before we get started, I need to congratulate René, who was elected as the president of the UITP.
Authorities, operators, policymakers, researchers, and suppliers. And Renee is the first Canadian and the first woman to be appointed as president of the UITP in the association's 138-year history. Elle a été élue présidente à l'unanimité.
She was unanimously elected by the members of the union during the Global Public Transit Summit that happened at the beginning of the month.
June, and her election was unanimous by the members. Félicitations. Congratulations, René.
Thank you very much.
And over to you for today's update. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est un réel plaisir pour moi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's very much a pleasure for me to hear that.
Thank you, Chair Gower and councillors, for joining us today at Transit Commission meeting. I'm pleased to provide you all with updates today on key initiatives, ongoing recruitment efforts, performance indicators, and our on-demand transit pilot project. Next slide, please. We are excited to say that the new red smart card readers have been installed on all buses and trains, and testing on fare gates began in June. We are looking forward to expanding this to buses in July. The official launch of O-Payment to the entire system is expected to occur in the coming months to allow fare payments by credit card or mobile wallet. With Canada Day just around the corner, our team has been working diligently to ensure a smooth day of operations. On Canada Day, customers will be able to ride the bus, train, or paratranspo for free all day. In addition to this, there will be increased downtown service to accommodate the increased number of people expected to attend various festivities. There will also be additional special event service occurring this summer. We were also pleased to announce our new partnership with the transit app. OC Transpo is now providing a subscription to the Premium Royal service to all users of the hub in Ottawa. This will make it even easier for customers to access information on their trips. As of July 1st, we are pleased to implement free service on OC Transpo for children 12 and under, as approved in the 2023 budget. To help facilitate this change, free OC Transpo child photo IDs will be available at the Customer Service Center at the Rideau Center. Over the past few weeks, there have been partial closures to the O-Train Line 1 to complete annual maintenance. This included rail grinding, switch point work, systems inspections, tunnel cleaning, vegetation control, and track work. One of the larger initiatives involved grouting to address water infiltration in the downtown tunnel. The main area just east of Rideau Station has been addressed. We are currently awaiting our contractor's report on the work completed and next steps. I would like to thank our customers for their patience while we completed the necessary maintenance work. I'm also pleased to have members of my team here today to provide an update on our O-Train Extension customer readiness and marketing campaign. Shortly, Lisa Bishop-Spencer will present the overall plan in preparation for the launch of Stage 2. This multi-year project will inform and prepare customers and residents to use the system and generate positive interest for the launch of each of the new extensions. Our team will then present the roadmap for transit services, which lays out our priorities for the next 5 years. I'm now pleased to pass things over to Olivia Miguanti, our Transit Employee Management Program Manager, to discuss some exciting updates on our recruitment objectives. À toi, ma chère.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here today to showcase some of the good work that we've been doing on the recruitment front at Transit. Next slide. So first, I'd like to begin with a quick update on the Transit Job Fair and Roadshow, which we hosted late last month. It was the very first event of its kind, and I'm pleased to say it exceeded all of our expectations. Comme vous le savez, nous avons des objectifs.
As you know, we have very bold goals this year. So this was an excellent way, not only to spread the word that we're hiring, but also to explain that a career in this area can be diverse and enriching. We had the ability to speak to more than 500 people and to provide them useful information on the various jobs available at OC Transpo and on the way to succeed in the hiring process.
Spike in applications in the week following the job fair and roadshow, triple the average number, in fact. So all in all, a really great success. Next slide, please. So to ensure we meet our recruitment targets for the year, we have an in-house recruitment team dedicated to attracting the right people for the various positions we're trying to fill. This team, as you can see on the screen, has been busy for just over a year now, ensuring that staffing levels are where they need to be to ensure that our operations are running as smoothly as possible. We've been busy screening thousands of applications, conducting interviews, and various assessments along the way. As you all know, it's a tough labor market out there. The job market has drastically changed over the last few years. So we are committed to ensuring we have the best processes in place and that we get ahead of any challenges before they occur. Next slide, please. So service reliability and continuity has and continues to drive our recruitment efforts. With the opening of lines 2 and 4 on the horizon, we need to ensure that we have the right people in place at the right times. So there are also many, many moving parts that we need to be prepared for, such as retirements, attrition, and career progression within operational groups. And so we need to be extra organized and strategic with the ways we recruit. So with that, I'd like to walk you through a tool that we use to plan and track our recruitment and training efforts for the year. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide here is our recruitment plan for the year for bus operators. I know there are a lot of numbers here, so I'm going to try and walk you all through it. The goal we've set for the year, which you can see on the far right column, the total column, is to hire 396 operator trainees, which will lead to 320 operator graduates. So we need to make nearly 400 conditional offers in order to have approximately 320 fully trained operators, because not everybody is successful at the training program. So each column in blue represents a class of new hires for the year. This is how we achieve our totals for the year, one class at a time. The top two rows of blue boxes represent our targets for each class, and the bottom two rows of blue boxes represent our actuals for each class. So if I can draw your attention to the first column with the February 20th date listed, this was our first class of new recruits for the year, and we plan to hire 600 operators, which we thought would yield 48 graduates. However, the actuals below indicate that although we did in fact have 60 trainees start on February 20th, only 40 were successful and graduated. Our plans are built to factor in some of these unpredictable outcomes. So as classes start and finish, we see our totals rise, and if we need to adjust along the way, we do just that. But as you can see in the bottom part of the totals column, we are seeing great progress. To date, we have hired 171 bus operators, trainees, and 108 have graduated. We have 22 more recruits currently in training and another 32 about to start after the long weekend, so nearly 200 in the pipeline. Next slide, please. So Transpo, there we go. We had a plan to hire upwards of 20 operators from January to May. We did just that. We hired 20 and 19 graduated successfully. We're talking about adding a class later in the fall to get ahead of retirements, but once we confirm those dates, we will add it to our plan. Next slide, please. Here we have customer service representatives. This is staff that staffs our call center. So you'll see here from January to the end of the year, we have classes almost every month, anywhere between 4 and 8 new hires a month. So we've made great progress. Our goal has been set for 64 this year. 23 have already been onboarded with another 8 ready to go in a couple of weeks. So great progress there. Next slide, please. So our transit maintenance team, we've got some classes here that spanning across the year. We've successfully hired 25 so far this year, and 25 have graduated. We have some placeholders for later in the fall once we establish our needs. If the needs arise, we will fill the classes as we determine. So next slide, please. So this is our final slide. This is for electric rail operators in blue and diesel rail operators in green. So we've got classes peppered throughout the year. Our goals for EROs are to hire 51 and have 41 successfully complete the program. And on the DRO side, our goals are to hire 82 and have 65 graduate. So far, we've hired 19 EROs and 32 DROs, and while only 10 have graduated in each group, we have several more in the pipeline and many more classes scheduled for the summer. So yeah, and just a note about the EROs and DROs, these positions are filled by our bus operator pool. And so that's why we have to constantly replenish that pool. And so having an eye on all these moving parts is critical to our success. So as time goes on and as these buckets and boxes continue to get filled, we'll keep you posted on our progress. So thank you.
Next slide, please. Bonjour, Président et membres du Commission
Hello, Chair and members of the Transportation Commission. I'm Paul Treboutat. I'm Head of Security. This morning, I'm going to present to you some indicators pertaining to our safety management system.
been 360 employee injuries at OC Transpo. For the month of May, there were 78 injuries, and the top 3 injury types were traumatic/stressful events, 13, struck or caught by an object, 12, and assaults, 11. Among the traumatic/stressful events and assault injury types, the majority of these injuries have happened among our bus operators. Many of these incidents involving bus operators are the result of unruly or impaired passengers, and some passengers refusing to pay the required fare. To address this, we are putting together a communication campaign that will lay out expectations on customer behavior when using public transit. In addition, we have been ramping up fare inspection efforts. Please have a look at the table at the bottom of the slide there. For the months of April and May, my special constable unit has been training and orienting recently hired transit fare enforcement officers on their duties with a particular focus on some of the hot spots for fare evasion in our LRT stations. This week, their duties, the fare inspection or fare enforcement officers, have expanded to include select bus routes to inspect for fare compliance. Next, I draw your attention to the customer injury rate. So the customer injuries to date is at 1.29 per 1 million trips. And it's holding fairly close to what we have observed for the year of 2022. We continue to see that hard braking events on buses are the main contributing cause for injuries requiring medical attention for our customers. This supports that we are also seeing in the next table on vehicle collisions. We are seeing that both the total vehicle collision rate of 2.41 collisions per 100,000 kilometers traveled and the preventable collision rate of 1.07 per 100,000 kilometers travels exceed our safety management targets. Recognizing that this trend is increasing month over month, we've put together and launched a 1-day mandatory driver refresh training for all OC Transpo employees authorized to operate an OC Transpo vehicle as part of their job duties. Next slide, please. The refresher training focuses on following defensive driving techniques, following standard operating procedures for servicing stops, and measuring operators' risk profile. For bus operators, this 1-day refresher consists of a 3-hour classroom module on defensive driving at controlled intersections and increasing awareness when servicing stops. And this is followed by a drive-able assessment that is designed to require the driver to demonstrate the material from the classroom instruction. In addition to this training, we continue to communicate to our drivers and operators through monthly safety observation campaigns related to the Highway Traffic Act. For the month of June, our focus has been on traffic lights, with a particular attention being paid to using eye lead and planning ahead, preparing for stale green lights, knowing their stopping distances, planning for the decision point, hovering over the brake pedal, following the speed limit, driving to current road conditions, and not rushing and requiring them to put safety first. This 1-day refresher training and our continued focus to advocate strongly for safe vehicle operation is an investment in safety. And now I'd like to pass the floor to my colleague, Mr. Pat Scrimger. Thank you.
Merci, Paul. Dans les graphiques suivants,
Thank you, Paul. In the following graphics, we will be taking a look at the performance indicators for April and May of 2023.
This slide shows Paratranspo on-time performance. Paratranspo on-time customer pickup performance held relatively steady for the months of April and May at 94% and 93%. This is the percentage of customers picked up on time during their booked 30-minute pickup window. Next slide, please. Ce tableau montre le temps pendant lequel une personne
This chart shows the time that someone has to wait when booking a trip on Paratranspo. The results are below our average response rate of 15 minutes with response times for April of 3 minutes 24 seconds and 4 minutes 12 seconds for May. Next slide, please.
In April, Paratranspo saw 81,200 reservations through the customer center and online. In May, there was a further increase to 86,700 reservations being made. The number of reservations being made online continues to grow. In April, 7.8% of reservations were made online through the My Paratranspo service, increasing to 8.1% in May, and that's shown by the orange part of the bar. Our continued education and encouragement of customers to use our online booking tool is paying off, with May recording the highest rate of reservations made online to date. Next slide, please. This slide shows customer complaints on Paratranspo service, down slightly from April. Feedback from Paratranspo customers averaged 2.8 complaints per 1,000 trips in May. In May, we also received fewer complaints than the previous month relating to bookings and information and fares, and we received slightly more calls related to service delivery and service policy than in the previous month. Overall, the complaints at 2.8 per 1,000 trips fall below the number of complaints received at the same time last year when we were at 3.0 per 1,000 trips. Next slide, please. On this chart, you see Paratranspo ridership monthly totals in thousands of customer trips. The red line represents 2019 pre-pandemic conditions. The gray line is the ridership that was included in the 2023 budget, and the gray colored bars are the last year's 2022 monthly ridership for comparison. The black bar shows ridership this year, with April seeing a total of 59,100 trips, which is above the budget prediction, and ridership continues to grow, continuing to exceed expectations in May, with ridership at 67,000 trips, also above the budgeted level. And so we continue to see strong Paratranspo ridership recovery year over year, and we're now sitting at just 12,000 trips less than the pre-pandemic ridership in May 2019. Next slide, please. This slide shows Paratranspo fare revenue. It's tracking the same way as ridership. April ridership was very slightly below the budget, and May ridership is slightly over the budgeted ridership. Alors, comme la section concernant Paratranspo est terminée,
I'm done with Paratranspo, so I will pass the floor to my colleague, Troy Charter.
Thank you very much, Pat. Merci. So the performance of Line 1 continues to demonstrate extended periods of high reliability supporting our customers' commutes. I'd also like to point out, and as Madame Amilcar previously indicated, we do appreciate our customers' patience and understanding as important work on the rail infrastructure was completed over the 2 weeks in June. For the month of April, we saw our service reliability at 94.5%, which was greatly impacted by the freezing of rain event at the beginning of the month. However, following that event and into May, we saw very, very high reliability. So for the month of May, service delivered was at 99.7%. And the service for the month of June, which is not yet shown, is exhibiting a similar trend of at least 99% reliability for each week of the month. Since the beginning of April, post the ice event, there's been no unplanned R1 rail replacement bus service. There's been no new issues, and service delivery has been 99% or greater. Pour le mois de mai, le service rendu était
For May, it was 99.7%, and for June, we don't yet have the information, but the trend is similar. Since the beginning of April, there have been no disruptions requiring replacement buses.
Next slide, please. With respect to the bus service delivery, for the month of May, we delivered 98.7% of planned service. As a result of the consistent and sustained recruitment efforts that Madame Amelkar and my colleague Olivia McGinty have previously discussed, we've seen a reduction in the incidences of bus cancellations due to employee shortages. Bus service reliability has consistently increased throughout the year from 96.7 in January to 98.1 in April and now 98.7 in May. As we continue to recruit and train staff, as well as make additional service adjustments associated with our quarterly service changes, we expect that bus service reliability will continue to improve. Alors que nous continuons de recruter et de
We
former
are continuing our recruitment and training, as well as adjusting services relating to service modifications, and we expect bus reliability to continue to be improved.
So this slide, we get into a little bit more detail as to the cancellations and the reasons for the cancellations, and it's focused on primarily the month of May. So as you can see from the data, service achieved for the month of May continued to improve, and as a result, the number of cancellations reduced from the 2% that we previously reported to 1.3% that we're experiencing now in May. If you recall, in March, we experienced, on an average weekday, we were seeing about 231 trips not delivered out of a little over 8,300 trips. And for the month of May, the undelivered trips is down to 130 out of approximately just over 8,100 trips. As I previously mentioned, the ongoing recruitment efforts are yielding positive results, and the number of trip cancellations due to operator resources has reduced from 40% in March to 16% in May. On-street adjustments due to issues such as traffic and detours account for the largest percentage of trips undelivered. It's important to note that we now have the correct number of operator resources to provide the service. However, we have continued work to do to address the absenteeism that is impacting the availability of our operators. As we continue to hire and implement plans to address operator availability, the number of the number of canceled trips will further reduce. We also anticipate that these actions will provide additional assistance in reducing cancellations due to trip adjustments, as we'll have more resources available to adjust without a cancellation. Alors que nous continuons à embaucher et mettre en œuvre des plans pour répondre à la disponibilité
We
des
continue to recruit, and the number of canceled trip will diminish. We will also need additional assistance to reduce the cancellation.
Additionally, our engineering team continues to work proactively with our maintenance team to further improve on bus availability and to reduce the number of undelivered trips due to mechanical issues. And lastly, at the bottom of the chart, you see the top 3 routes with the highest number of cancellations. This was a request at one of the previous meetings to include. So for the month of May, the trips that had the highest number of cancellations include the 11, the 75, and the 85. And if you recall, previously in the month of March, it was R2, so the bus service that was replacing the Trillium line, the 15, and the 85. Next slide, please. So now moving on to ridership on the O-Train and conventional buses, we continue to experience a consistent trend throughout the year of exceeding the previous year's ridership. We also continue to observe the seasonal fluctuations in our ridership that we've seen in pretty much every single year. Over the months of February, March, April, and May, the estimated budgeted ridership shown as the black closely aligns with the actual ridership we're seeing on the system, albeit slightly below for most months with the exception of March. For the month of May, ridership was 4.8 million with a budgeted ridership of 5 million. Next slide, please. With respect to fare revenue, once again for the O-Train and bus, we've observed a similar trend. Month over month, fare revenue exceeds the previous year's revenue, however, has not recovered at the same degree as ridership. For the month of May, this year compared to 2022, fare revenue was $3.1 million higher, achieving $10.6 million in the month. However, the budgeted revenue amount for that amount was 11.6. So at this point, I'll now turn things over to my colleague, Claire O'Donnell, the Program Manager for Service Strategy, who will tell you about on-demand transit. Merci.
Merci, Troy. OC Transpo is pleased to share that we're pursuing an on-demand transit pilot project. Next slide, please. On-demand transit leverages technology to provide flexible scheduling and routing in real time. This helps to reduce wait and travel times while improving the customer experience. Under this pilot project, customers can request an origin, destination, and time within a specified geographical zone using an app, website, or the contact center. On-demand transit is a project assigned to staff by the Transit Commission in the 2021 business plan and is a strategic initiative in the roadmap before the Commission today. Next slide, please. The on-demand pilot project is in the early planning stages, and we recently entered into a software agreement with Pantonium, a Canadian supplier specializing in on-demand transit. This supplier has the expertise, experience, and tools to assist OC in selecting 2 or 3 test zones for the pilot project. The pilot zones must either be a growing area with limited or no transit service, or areas with current service with low ridership. We are targeting the pilot launch in late fall 2023 with weekend-only service using existing Paratranspo minibuses. There's potential to expand to daily service and more zones after the pilot period with the acquisition of new vehicles. Because we're currently in the early planning phase of the on-demand transit pilot project, we will have more details available at a future Transit Commission meeting, where we will also report with a business plan containing our recommendations for expansion. Thank you. Merci.
Okay, thank you to all of you. Before we go to questions for staff, we have one delegation registered. We have David Jeans here with us this morning. Good morning, David.
Thank you, Chair. I believe this is my first in-person Transit Commission since the start of the pandemic. I represent Transport Action Canada, which is an advocacy group, and Transport Action Ontario. I'm here to ask why is OC Transpo ending the streetcar 696 project tomorrow, and what will happen to the car? In 2002, OC Transpo asked Transport Action, which was then called Transport 2000, to be a project partner as we were a registered charity, and this fell within our educational purpose. The request was in person and in writing from OC Transpo management. For 5 years, we raised funds and also in 2004 accepted the donation of a second streetcar body, Car 905, which we transferred to OC Transpo as a city department in 2007. I was president of Transport Action during this period. I'll point out that I'm not a member of the 696 volunteer group, a number of whom are here today. OC Transpo told us in 2002 that they had recruited volunteers from among their staff. The team has always been led by an OC Transpo employee or retiree, but other enthusiasts have participated, as well as high school classes and people doing community service. We were told then that OC Transpo planned to raise $250,000 to complete the project. In fact, materials to this value have been donated over the years, plus the extensive volunteer hours. The decision was taken early on to dismantle the original car in order to create the non-existent construction drawings and to build a replica, with the ultimate goal being a working streetcar. Going back to 1959, the old city of Ottawa and Ottawa Transportation Commission failed to preserve any of its streetcars from their 68-year history. This is unlike the TTC in Toronto, which has preserved 5 streetcars of different models and has provided many more, including subway cars, to the Halton Radial Railway Museum near Guelph in working condition. It actually took a group of individuals in 1959 to rescue car 696 from the scrapper with their own funds and move it to Montreal. I knew all these people who are now deceased, though Bill McEwen had moved to Japan, so I never met him in person. McEwen wrote this encyclopedic history of Ottawa streetcars, which the 696 group has sold many copies of to promote awareness of our history. The old city of Ottawa in 1989, in partnership with the developer of Britannia Park, brought 696 back from Montreal, and again, volunteers whom I knew were involved. But the plan to display the car at Britannia did not go forward. Instead, OC Transpo stored it until the 2002 project. It would not be appropriate to send the nearly completed car to Expo Rail or the Canada Science and Technology Museum, both of which already have unrestored Ottawa streetcars. Car 696 should be displayed to the public as originally planned. Former OC Transpo General Manager Gord Diamond has confirmed this intention. That would respect the OC Transpo employees, retirees, and other volunteers who have twice won a Mayor City Builder Award for this work. It would respect the group that saved it in 1959 and the person who produced the comprehensive history. It would respect the many donors of materials and services, and it would reflect Ottawa's 55-year industrial history of building streetcars for the entire country. I think I'm out of time, am I? Or 1 minute, okay. If it wasn't for the pandemic, the volunteers would already have completed enough work to support the display of the car. It looks really good right now. The window glass has to be installed on one side. There's a small bit of floor missing, and the seats, which are ready to install, have not yet been installed. But all this would have been done if the group had not been excluded from access to the workshop through most of the pandemic and completely since last November. They're not even allowed to go in to take photographs, and OC Transpo had already taken over part of the shop to store diesel motors, which created a health and safety issue on top of the pandemic-related matters. I would say that the replica as built is the property of the city, and so I think you should be concerned as to what happens to it. The original car 696 no longer exists. 2 other things to mention. There are places
David, that is your time.
All right, the other
Thank
2 things don't matter.
Thank you.
Good.
Are there any questions for Mr. Jeans?
Yes, Chair, I'll have a couple questions. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Jeans. I had met with Streetcar 696 in the past, and we had talked a lot about the potential for bringing them to Lansdowne Park, specifically in the horticulture building, to display this. The streetcars that used to run along Grove and along Bank Street, there's a long history there, and there's still some displays right outside Lansdowne of where that old streetcar ran. And just fantastic to have this type of history in the city. I'm just wondering, what is the current plan for the replica? Like what will happen if this occurs?
That's my question. It's city property on city property, and the volunteers have no resources to move it anywhere else or to provide the space to store it. This was an OC Transpo project. We did not enter into an agreement with the volunteers to be a fundraising partner back in 2002. And the people who've donated $250,000 of materials have not donated it to the volunteers. They've donated it to OC Transpo in the city. So I think this is your problem. It's not really my problem. I can make suggestions. Lansdowne Park might be an appropriate place to display it. It was hoped that there could be when it was got into running order, that there could be a little loop track there. Back in the Britannia day, there was a plan to run it from Britannia Park to Andy Hayden Park, which would have been nice along the recreational pathway along the waterfront there. There are other places it could be displayed, but OC Transpo should be taking care of it going forward.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I've been concerned about the emails we've been getting about the fate of this, just given all the volunteer hours. I think they used to have a lot of students come in as well and work on this replica. There's been a lot of history for this, even in the recent times, about volunteers coming in to actually volunteer their hours, I think through high schools as well. So it's been such a cool project, and to let a piece of our history just kind of fade away this way after all the work that's been put in, it doesn't make much sense. So I think we need to, through the city, to be facilitating the space for you to finish the project, and Rayom and others to make sure that we're supporting this. And so just appreciate you coming out today, and I'll have more questions for staff during the question period. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions for Mr. Jeans? Okay, I'm seeing none. Thank you, David, for being here in person today. Good to see you back. We'll go to questions for staff, and actually, maybe I ask, could staff respond to Mr. Jeans's comments about looking for a solution for the streetcar?
Sure, Chair, we're still working on a final solution, and I should be able to provide more detail on the weeks coming.
So staff is aware, and they're working on a solution then?
Correct.
Okay. When could we expect an update? Are we talking weeks or months, or how soon?
I would say as soon as possible, because we absolutely need the space, and we should have had access to that space at the end of this month. Unfortunately, we're trying to find a solution, so probably at the end of next month, we should have the final solution to propose.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Brockington, you're the first hand up this morning.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. It's always good to see the review of issues over the last month. I just wanted to start off with the chart that you showed regarding the number of bus trips that were taken, and you highlighted 3 bus routes in particular, the 11, 75, and 85. I appreciate that. I know the 85 well. That's a route that serves the northern part of River Ward, a number of wards that it connects through, and it's chronically struggling to offer reliable service. It's probably the #1 route I hear about in my ward, and here it is on your top 3 list. And I appreciate there was a chart that gives some of the reasons that contribute to some of the challenges for bus routes, but this route is consistently struggling to provide reliable service, impacting the same customers over and over again. So what is your plan to address these chronic bus routes? I don't know the routes as well in other wards. I want other councillors to champion those routes. But part of what I've been asking for as a commissioner here is when you present statistics that show 98.5% reliability, we have no idea the routes that are struggling because that data gets buried. So this month you provided and you've highlighted 3 routes in particular, but I'd like to know what the plan is to provide reliable service on these routes. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for every route in the city, our team reviews these kind of statistics in much more detail regularly every day and every week. So on a daily basis, the controllers who work in the Transit Operations Control Center are watching any issues as they arise, making adjustments to the service, bringing in additional buses where required, to put a bus back on schedule, reporting up any chronic problems either that the operators are observing or that controllers are observing. Over the longer term, we look at the statistics every week to see whether there are changes we should be making, such as advancing transit priority measures, changing the way parking regulations are established, changing the way traffic is flowing, changing the timing of traffic signals, whether we should be bringing any capital projects to Commission and Council for approval in the following year. We also look regularly at how long the bus takes to get from one end of the line to the other, and whether we should slow the service down to make it more reliable, to make it better reflect the conditions that the buses are operating through, the traffic conditions and the ridership conditions. That's ongoing work for every route, and primarily, in a problem-solving way for the routes that are suffering the most from those external influences.
I would like to complete, if I may, I will speak French, so please be ready. It will be more quick. Pour la route 85 en
For the 85 in particular, we know that it's often a problem. So what I want to do with my teams is have buses with operators that be ready to go when we know we're going to have a problem. So when we know we have recurring problems with a certain number, we will put additional service to fill the gap, or we have to accept to change the trip because we know that there's traffic problems or whatever. So we may have to review the level of service provided. So we can provide the same service, we'll have to add buses and operators. As you know, since we work together, we've been always very transparent with you. And you know that the biggest challenge that we had was the lack of operators. The colleagues were clear with you today to explain that this is behind us now. We've seen clearly on the chart that our biggest challenge now is traffic. So to overcome this, we will have to include buses and operators right in the middle of the route. It will cost money. We know that we are already in the budget year, so we'll have to come back to you with proper information on that. But there's no miracle. For traffic, it's really what's needed is more service.
Thank you for that added information, Madame Amical. There are obviously 3 routes that are in the top 3, best reliability, and the people who ride on routes 11, 75, and 85 deserve to be provided the same type of service. So I appreciate you acknowledging this, and certainly work with you on providing better service, more reliable service on this matter. Today you referenced absenteeism as an issue as well that impacts reliability. And I'm wondering if we could get a report at our next meeting that talks about absenteeism in particular and some of the challenges that you're facing running the organization. I'll just park that with you, but this has been referenced by you on a number of occasions, and I think we need to fully understand how this is impacting operations. So I appreciate that. I know there's a lot of hands up. I just wanted to talk again about the on-demand service. Could you just elaborate? How are you going to inform councillors who have impacted routes in their ward about what you're planning, which routes, the timing, how you're going to inform the public? Can you just expand on that, please?
Sure,
you,
I have Claire online. Go ahead, please, Claire.
Thank you, Councillor. We're still developing our communications plan, and that includes with the councillors and the public and our customers, and we'll have that information ready in the fall.
Okay, so this is not starting in the fall, just the preliminary information on routes and how it's going to unfold. That's when you're going to start engaging councillors?
We'll engage with the councillors and the customers as soon as that information is available.
Fair enough. Okay. I have other questions, Chair, but I'll yield the floor now and come back. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I kind of want to build a little bit on Councillor Brockington's question about the 85, and before I go to my actual questions, and I think it's fairly safe to assume that there's one portion of the 85 that just affects the rest of it. From my own experiences in the past, as well as current observations, it seems that Preston Street, and the fact that it goes to Gatineau is really drawing down the service, really drawing down the reliability along the rest of the route. I think it's safe to, you can say that the Tulip Festival probably also skewed the cancellation data a little bit in the month of May. So I was wondering, has there ever been discussions of maybe severing the Gatineau section of the 85 and perhaps separating that little bit to increase overall reliability, not just 85, but probably with other routes that do service Gatineau?
Mr. Chair, the current route network in that area is as decided by City Council in 2009 and 2011. And we are reviewing all parts of the route network in the current route review, which is part of the 5-year roadmap that you'll hear about later. So suggestions like that, which come from councillors or customers, or which arise out of the data on where customers are traveling to and from, will all be part of that route review work that's going on already.
Okay, if you could just, I guess, take that as a suggestion. Okay, actual questions. I was looking at the data about the new hires, the new bus operator training, and noticed that there is a notable fail rate, non-pass rate for the very large class of 60 that started the 20th of February, and it's it's a rate of failure that is not present in the smaller classes. Further down in the year, so later in the summer and then in the fall and winter, I note that there are also classes of 60 that you're planning to start. Do you have any concerns about the pass-fail rate in those larger classes, like what happened in February?
So yes, we've noticed the same thing. We're learning as we go. Of course, these are unprecedented numbers of recruitment for us. So as time goes on, we are refining. The training team, the recruitment team and I work with almost daily, we've been in contact about this, and their plan for the bigger classes later this fall is to break them up into 3 separate groups. So training literally is around the clock. And so having 3 groups of 20 will help alleviate that challenge, because we've noticed the same. A lot more one-on-one attention and support along the way throughout the training program in those smaller groups.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, because my class was a class of 14, and every class around us was 32. We were that one small class and we got a lot of one-on-one time, and I think that was really helpful. Second question about the maintenance that was done at on line 1 over the last little while. Is that going to take away the need for that summer maintenance that we normally do, the 2 weeks of early closures in August, assuming the report says everything's fine, we've done everything?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you. Actually, one more question, sorry. The ridership data that's presented there, when I was at the CUDA conference in Saskatoon, a lot of councillors and officials from other transit systems note that rapid transit ridership has lagged bus ridership. So in our case, the line 1 is likely lagging behind buses. I don't know if that's true, but in Toronto for sure, the subway's lagging buses, Edmonton's light rail's lagging buses. So I was wondering if maybe we can separate that ridership data at all between line 1 and buses. I know there's a lot of integrated transferring now. There's the fare paid zones. It's hard to really tell, but is that a possibility? And yeah, is that a possibility?
Chair, we have this data, and I can share with you that actually for the bus, we have 75% of ridership, and on the line 1, it's 43%.
Cool. Okay, that was nice. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Curry.
Thank you very much. Thanks for a great presentation. I have a couple of comments, a couple of questions. I'll start, I think, with Councillor Brockington asked about absenteeism, and that's coming back to us. I guess my question is, what is coming back to us? Will it be a deep dive on specific reasons why people are absent? Because it tells a number of stories when you understand why people are actually absent. I mean, obviously people get sick, right? But I'm wondering, is there actual interviews? I know there's only so much you can ask personally about why somebody's not coming to work. But will we actually get data that will be helpful to understand, that would then affect the other things we do in terms of training, in terms of how people are treated or work conditions, those types of things?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. We are conducting actually a deep dive on the absenteeism. I'm working a lot with HR because I would like to have more accurate data. In-house at OC Transpo, we have built our own data because we absolutely needed something to start. And what we're seeing, it's people on WSIB and LTD, those people are very, very high. And because of that, we just hire someone with HR to help us to address those absenteeism, long-term absenteeism. And the other thing that I need to better understand before to come here, but we'll be ready for sure in September, is the short-term absenteeism. We know that we are federal regulated, thank you, légiféré en français. And so because of that, people can take a lot of day off without having any paper, without asking us permission. So I will need to come here to present to you what that means and what I will need to be able to face with. So if we agree that because we're federal regulated, we have to live with that. So I will need to be able to address that by having more people and to be able to have a sustainable service.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to that report, actually, because it's something that is not just in this area. Like, it's not just the city, it's in every part of life. People, the absenteeism and the short-term absenteeism is the biggest problem. You know, out of nowhere, someone is sick and then you have to reroute a bus and then it's late and then you have the stats. Okay, I'll look forward to that. The other thing I was going to ask is, in your recruiting, I mean, Councillor Leeper and I were just talking about, you know, there are low numbers given how many you start with, you know? And so I'm wondering as well, is there a real analysis of why people are failing? I mean, I'm sure there is, but I give you the example of, I remember Vern White talking about police officers in Northern Ontario that had a question on a test. And I know yours isn't just a written test, but that asked people to figure out what they were going to do if they got the green light to go ahead and do something. And everybody failed that question because in Northern Ontario, there are no street lights. This is Northern Ontario, and people didn't understand what the green light, what does that mean? So they failed that question because they just had to make up an answer. So I wonder about that. Are there specific sticking points that you're really noticing why people are not actually able to graduate?
It's hard to say. There's a variety of reasons. Sometimes candidates will get into the training program and realize it's really not for them. You know, being a bus operator in theory is different than being a bus operator in practice, and the training program is very rigorous. So yeah, we've got a mix of reasons why people don't make it through. And then of course, if they don't pass certain, you know, assessments along the way throughout the training program, they won't make it through. But on the recruitment side, it is very interesting to us and for us because a lot of work, time, energy goes into getting that candidate to training. There are many screening steps along the way. And so, yes, it's curious to us, you know, why there's such big drops, but we are monitoring and trying to get ahead of those issues before they arise.
Thank you. And on that, if someone fails one of the important tests, do they get to have a redo? Do they get to go back? Like they're not just done, you failed it and then you're done.
So do you mean once they're in training, if they fail a component? So yes, they have 2 chances for the final road test. And I think as throughout the program, if someone is unsuccessful or struggling in a certain area, additional supports are provided to them. But yes, that final road test that determines whether, you know, you make it to graduation or not, there are 2 attempts and only 2 attempts.
I just would ask you to think about that. Electricians are allowed to write that test that is unbelievably difficult. Like I think somebody has written it 21 times. So not that that's a good idea, but I'm just thinking if it's only 2, I wonder if that would make any difference. You know, as a teacher, people take quite a long time to learn and figure stuff out. However,
Chair, if you don't mind, I would like maybe to ask Paul Tributat to comment on that because he's the Chief Safety Officer and it will provide you more info why we cannot redo that test many times. Paul, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Councillor, it's actually a requirement of the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario. And we have a delegation authority from them to be able to administer these tests for the purposes of achieving licensure under the Province of Ontario Highway Traffic Act. And we are not permitted to test them more than the twice that's been 2 times it's been mentioned.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. The last thing I was just going to say was really a comment that I'm really looking forward to the business plan on the on-demand busing. That will be the key document. You know, I saw in there that it will require new vehicles, right? And will be paratransport vehicles, but potentially more. It'll be interesting to see the business plan because I think there is an assumption that it will reduce our costs. And I think that's one of our more important documents because people are so excited about it, but we really need to make sure it is the right thing to do financially too. Thank you.
Will do.
Councillor Menard.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure if I was up this early. Appreciate the presentation from staff. I have a number of questions and hopefully I get through it in one round here. On the on-demand service, I know we're going to be presented with a report later on with it. Is there any consideration right now of if this is going to be suggested to be run fully internally through OC Transpo? Is it that a private company would come in that would be hired? Is there a model that you're looking at right now in terms of that business plan?
Chair, actually, it will be internal at the OC Transpo.
Okay, thank you for that. And then have you selected the areas already that you're thinking of piloting this, or is that still to come?
We have selected some areas, but we have to continue to work and we'll definitively consult councillors before to take the final decision, but we'll propose some recommendations.
Okay, yeah, I want to make sure, like, if we're doing a capital investment for new vehicles, you know, how that would work. Obviously, that's more than a potential pilot project if we're investing in new vehicles. And we want to make sure that this is something that will actually benefit the city. And so it's I know this is a big shift for OC Transpo because I think previously there was comments that we wouldn't want to do this, and that from OC Transpo itself, just I think 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And so it's something that we're obviously going to want to see the business case for it, and that it's actually going to improve service. I think reliability and frequent service is key here, and we have a big geographical area, of course, but we wouldn't want this to be replacing other reliable service that exists now. And so I just have a lot of questions about how this may or may not work and whether it's something we really want to be undertaking as a municipality. When did you anticipate that report would come back for us to consider it? And at what date would you sort of approximately would you think this would be something that would be implemented?
Chair, we're still working on it, and as Councillor Vice Chair Curry just said, we will come with the business plan because now we would like to go with an on-pilot project just to make sure to complement the business plan because, you know, on paper it's nice, and I have colleagues in other cities who are very who appreciate very their experience. Sorry for that. Je vais parler en français. Alors, on va revenir cet automne, c'est sûr.
This fall, we'll get back to you with something. Before the pilot project, we will get back to you, the councillors, to present to you what we want to do. At the current time, we want the pilot project to be zero cost. So we're going to use the fleet that we have, the minibuses that we have, and we'll arrange things so that the pilot project costs nothing, and then we'll make recommendations to make the pilot project larger, and we'll get back to the Transit Commission.
Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful. I look forward to that discussion when it does come. I wanted to speak about the fare inspectors and the warnings and the tickets, and just purely from a financial perspective, if that's okay. I'm just wondering the cost differential between the tickets that are being issued and the cost of the actual fare inspectors themselves. So if you're able to send me just how much we spend on salaries, employment costs for fare inspectors, that would be helpful. And I think you mentioned that kind of May and June period where we had the warnings and tickets issues, and in June the warnings and 33 tickets issued. I'd be interested to know how much those tickets are and how much we're spending on fare inspectors. Do you have some of that information now?
Paul, you're on mute.
Excuse. Thank you, Chair, for the question. As you can perhaps appreciate, Councillor, we're in a stage where we're resuming or reintroducing fare inspection after having gone through our rather dark period associated with COVID. The fare inspectors that we've brought on are new. They themselves are going through continued on-job training and orientation to the role. As you can appreciate, there's a lot of angry people in our transit system, using our transit system, and we want to be really sure that these inspectors approach this in a manner that assures their safety as well as the safety of the passengers that are on the buses currently. So our approach to this has been kind of going at it gradually and slowly and working up to it. And so I would perhaps suggest, if it's acceptable, that we give this kind of a 6 to 8 month development period before we start to look at how the numbers are playing out. I'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you for that. What I'll do, Paul, is I'll just send you the questions I have over email, and then maybe we can start to just go through it that way. Obviously, if we're spending more on the fare inspectors than is bringing in, that's an issue, and so want to make sure that we're doing this for good reason, and I'll send you that email separately.
Sorry, Chair, if I can comment on that, because this is very important. On transit, we must have inspectors because we know, unfortunately, that we don't ask to our bus drivers to react with customers when they don't pay. However, we ask them to inform us, and based on non-official info, apparently, we have seen a lot of people who don't pay the ride. That doesn't mean they don't have a regular ticket, but they don't pass it. So we want to make sure that those people will pay, and we will monitor those infractions, and we will share those info with you. But it's a good practice to have fare inspector on transit.
Yeah, I'll send those questions just over email. And as I say, I'm approaching this from a financial perspective and a human behavior perspective. So I'll send those to you that way, and great to get that information back. It's very appreciated. I wanted to raise the transit for I guess school-aged kids, so 18 and under, 19 and under, depending. I've been hearing from some school board trustees that the province is cutting the transportation budget for school boards, and that is causing, obviously we've been seeing issues every time school starts up with a bus service. That's through OSTA, the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority, for the 2 largest school boards in Ottawa. And of course, it has an effect with us too, just given that the school boards pay us for some transit passes for their students. The school board trustees that are talking about the transportation budget cuts being phased in from the Ford government. to the school boards, and it's going to be difficult again come this fall, even more difficult than it has been in the past. Obviously, OC Transpo, I think, has done a good thing, and Councillor Brockington's motion around transit for 12 and under is important in this regard. A lot of kids with their parents or otherwise taking the bus. I think there is a potential model out there for those high school aged children as well, that given the provincial reductions here, there may be worth more conversations with OSTA, OC Transpo, and the province around what innovative models could be come up with for a type of UPass or school age passes for students in the 4 different school boards. And I think that the time is probably now to plant that idea and just have more discussions about it, given that we're seeing so much disruption come the fall and given where the province has been at. So I just wondering, is OC Transpo speaking more with OSTA about those upcoming issues, and are there potential solutions that could be looked at here of a type of UPass for students that are still in secondary school and below?
Mr. Chair, we're continuously in discussions with the 2 transportation authorities and through them with the 4 school boards. We have some service increases that will be starting this fall at the request of the English language school boards through OSTA. And that's mostly based on their operational needs, as their other contractors have been falling short on staffing availability and haven't been able to hire enough people to drive the yellow school buses. So they've moved more students over to travel on, or to be planned to travel on OC Transpo, and they purchase from us those passes. So we have not had any discussions about funding challenges to the school boards. We do know, and we've reported here before, that one of the big differences between whether the transportation authorities contract the operation out of yellow school buses or contract the operation out to us by purchasing passes from us. One of the big differences is that when they purchase passes from us, those are heavily funded also from city property tax, in addition to the provincial education funding. Whereas if they go to yellow school buses, that's a direct relationship with the yellow school bus company using the provincial education funding. And so there's definitely a higher cost to city taxpayers and pressure on property taxes, the more people that the school transportation authorities put onto OC Transpo. We, along with our colleagues in finance, would be ready to be part of any discussion if the school boards would like to purchase more passes from us, or would like to pay a higher share of the total cost of providing the service to their students. In effect, those students who are assigned to travel on OC Transpo have U-passes already. They have a monthly pass purchased from us by the school board or by the transportation authority for the students. The students are then issued that pass, and they can make unlimited travel on OC Transpo. If there's a wish to purchase more of those, they are available, and we'd be happy to sell them to any purchaser.
Thank you very much for that, Chair. I do think there's probably a unique timeline opportunity here, given that they already do purchase some passes from us. There's a service that we provide to them, the changes that are happening provincially, as well as the under 12, the free transit for those 12 and under coming in as of July 1st. I think there's potentially an opportunity to speak with them about that. And I would just encourage staff to do that, to reach out. I'll also speak to my OSTA colleagues that are on that board and ask that they reach out too. There may be some elegant solution that can help residents of Ottawa, parents with their kids and kids getting to school come the fall, which I know will be another challenge. So really appreciate that. I did mention I was going to bring up streetcar 696. Now, Chair, you did bring that up right after the delegation to staff. So I heard the general manager speak about the fact that that's going to come back in a few weeks for a solution there. I'm really interested in partnering, if possible, around a place like Lansdowne Park, where this could be a feature, an attraction. There's lots of space in that horticulture building. It's built for large vehicles going in and out as well, and something that maybe could be housed there to help attract visitors. And what a nice thing to have in a public building. So just to say, I'm open to different solutions in my ward, certainly. And this has been such a fantastic project, and we really need to support them. So just wanted to make those comments and thank staff and yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a lot of questions from today's presentation. Thank you. It did strike me watching some of the numbers with respect to the call response time for Paratranspo, which is, it's within its range. Is there a difference in response time between, are there some peak hours at which that response time is significantly different than what we're being presented here?
It is longer earlier in the day, it is lower late in the day, but we also shift our staffing levels to match that. So there's more people working at the times that there are more calls coming in, and that serves to level things out. We report to you on a monthly average, but our management of the contact center is on a daily and hourly basis as we move people between tasks and try to answer those calls as quickly as possible.
Okay, on a one-off basis, I'm just wondering if I could get some insight into what those numbers look like for, say, the whatever your peak hours are early in the morning, like I guess that's probably like a 7 to 9 or something like that. Just on a one-off basis, so I can get a sense for how that's going. I'd appreciate it.
Sure, we'll do that.
So the 85 obviously is in the list as one of the top 3 routes. I heard Councillor Brockington ask a question about what the plan is for 85. I didn't hear a specific answer. I just wanted to read out, because of course I just recently received an email from a resident. Route 85 was the subject line, and it doesn't surprise me because it is one of the routes about which I hear the most complaints. And I just wanted to provide a bit of the flavor of that email. Bus service is bad, life-altering bad. Significant impact on my mental health bad. Not home in time to meet the kids bad. Missing meetings at work bad. Routinely waiting 40 minutes for a bus that is supposed to come every 15 minutes bad. It just feels like nobody cares anymore, like the city just gave up. I started writing this email because I was waiting for an 85 in Gatineau at 3:36. It came at 4:12, which is actually better than my wait time this morning. I've put a lot of ellipses in there, but those are the highlights. What can I tell this resident about how we're going to fix the 85 particularly? It is the one route about which I consistently and have been consistently hearing problems for several years. I was hopeful that focusing the 85 on Pimsey Station would help with the reliability, but it hasn't. Why is it so consistently unreliable, and how are we going to fix it?
Thank you, Chair. Can you give me 2 weeks? I will come back to you.
2 weeks? Thank you. Those are my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going on round 2. Councillor Brockington, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, Councillor Menard asked for financial information with respect to the fare inspectors' cost and revenues they bring in, but we need the bigger picture here. We need to be reminded the role and the mandate of fare inspectors. They do more than just fare inspecting of fares, but also I think you need to comment on your estimates for the lost revenues due to fare evasion. I think that's sort of part of the global answer, so we understand how big the problem is and what fare inspectors' job is. So if you're going to provide that information, that would be great. My other question is similar to what I asked a month ago, and that is we still haven't received a final report on the causes of the ice storm that happened in early April that took our LRT out for a number of days. We're now almost 3 months since that event and still no sort of final conclusions on what happened and how we're going to mitigate this going forward. I know it's hard to think about ice on Canada Day week, but it's important to get those details before this commission. Can you just let us know where we are in that investigation and when the commission will have a report back? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Yes, so in September, we will come back with a lot of new info, lightning strike that we had 1 year ago, I think. The 2 freezing rains, one in January and the other one it was in April. The root cause analysis for the bearing. So we will have very good update for you in September.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lowe.
Hi. Thank you, Chair. My question's about the future. One of the plans that for the Paratransport fleet. I know we're slowly going to renew that fleet. Is there an approximate timeline right now, or is that kind of maybe later on information that we'll get later on?
Chair, I don't know if Richard Holder is online. He has probably more info than me, but we're working with Metrolinx to renew that fleet. Oh, he's here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the question. As Madam Amilcar just indicated, we're looking at proceeding with procurement of the first batch of Paratransport buses. And that's expected to take place in the next few weeks, the first order. We're not exactly sure what the time frame is for delivery, but it could be up to 12 months before we get the first batch of Paratransport buses.
Okay, thank you. This kind of leads into my next question, is about, I know that there's a report coming in the fall about on-demand, like a more fulsome, like what it's going to look like, where it's going to go, blah, blah, blah. Is that so it is safe to assume that report will come in the fall and then the pilot will actually launch a little later, eh? Like I don't think it's concurrent, right? Do you have this information? Can I ask if you've explored opportunities with that to be retired Paratransport fleet using those vehicles, or are there safety concerns that would kind of just not allow us to use them beyond their paratransit lifespan?
Chair, actually, because we didn't finish the business plan, we are exploring all ideas. One of the ideas is maybe we will purchase similar as para buses, but for the on-demand service, or during the weekend, we know that we don't need a lot of para buses. So one of the things that we have put on the table is maybe we can start the pilot during the weekend where we have those buses available. So we are continuing to try to find the best solution, and definitively we'll keep you posted.
Okay, thank you. If anything, another idea to push up onto you there. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. So thank you to staff for the update this morning. Lots going on. We'll move on to the next item that we held on the agenda. 5.1 is capital adjustments and closing of projects for Transit Commission. Councillor Leeper, you had some questions on this one.
I do, thank you. So I'm going to turn our attention, if I may, to document 2, I believe. Yes, the budget adjustments requiring council approval. It looks like some fairly significant changes in spending that I just wanted to run through to make sure I understand those before we vote to approve those. There are line items 1, 3, 6, and 7 that I'm hoping we can run through for each. One of the changes in the reserves to return money into the reserves, On line 1, train and rail life cycle modifications, 2023, reserving 600,000 to reserves, and train and rail life cycle Trillium line returning 2.2 million to reserves. What are we not going to do with respect to those line items that allows us to return those funds in line 1 to reserves?
Mr. Chair, this is funding that was budgeted to be spent in 2023, but is not going to be required in 2023 because of cash flow, and has the ability, we have the ability to return that to the transit reserve, which Cyril will explain needs every dollar it can get.
Of course. Yeah.
And so because the cash flow on these projects was not expected, once we got to this point, we're not expected to need to spend the money in this calendar year. We have the ability now to return funds to the reserve and to make a new request for authority in a future year.
What would it have been spent on? No, it's obviously a big broad category. Train and life cycle modifications, train and rail life cycle, Trillium line. What would that spending have been?
Related to all of the things in that category. It could have been spent on those, excuse me, could have been spent on those things and would have had it been required this calendar year. So train and rail life cycle would, the upkeep of anything on the trains, anything on the infrastructure, all of which, of course, on line 2 is being renovated totally with the current project.
So life cycle to me normally implies that something has been in use for some significant time, and in order to continue it in use, there are investments that we need to make in terms of upgrades, repair, refurbishment. There's $2.8 million worth of life cycle in this category. And I'm still trying to understand, what would that have been spent on?
Would you like to say, Troy, more of what that would have been spent on?
Yeah, there was originally some money set aside to do power pack overhauls on the existing fleet of vehicles.
Okay.
And part of the turnover to T-Next, that money was earmarked for that, but it was actually there was funding already available for it. So that's the reason why that money can be returned.
Okay, so there was $2.8 million being toward power pack refurbishment.
Yeah,
that is going to be funded from another envelope, and thus this money can be.
It's all part of that transition to line 2 operations. Yes.
Okay, thank you, and that's exactly the answer I was looking for. I appreciate that. Can I move to line 3 for a moment? Transferring. There are some big categories. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do the math as quickly as I'd like, but roughly $5 million. Renewal of operational assets, where approximately $5 million will be returned into the transit return. Renewal of operational assets, O-Train telecommunications improvements, and communication and control systems onboard vehicles. What was that spending in lay terms that I can understand as a commissioner going to be spent on?
So two different things. They're all in one bundle. The renewal of operational assets is an ongoing program where we request and you give us authority to spend capital money on keeping up to current or making repairs to or life cycle replacement of all the things that are behind operating the transit system. That could be doors at a bus garage. It could be hoists that lift the buses. It could be tools. And this year we have a 2.3 million, which is in the existing authority, which our projections are we're not going to need to spend this year. The second part, where it talks about telecommunications improvements and communications and control systems on board buses, is largely and primarily about money that we had from previous years in order to start to replace the radios on our system. The radios aren't going to need replacement this calendar year. Replacing radios is a big project when we get to it, especially if there's any technology change.
Right.
The radios, as we look back to the years where we requested this authority, we thought 2023 might be the year we needed to start spending money on replacing radios. It isn't. We can go till 24 or 25 before we have to come back to you and ask for that authority.
So this year we approved the spending of $1.8 million on replacing the radios. We don't need to absolutely, but at some point we are going to need to spend that.
I don't think that approval came this year. I think this is a carryover from previous years, but we can check that detail.
Okay. So at some point in future, though, we will have to spend that. Is this by not spending it this year? What is the financial implication of deferring that spending? Because we're going to spend the money that we put back into reserves almost certainly.
We'll put it back into reserves where it can, and Cyril will say a little more about that. I just want to say, but the operational side is it would be, it's unnecessary to replace the radios before they need replacing.
So, Mr. Chair, so a couple of things, and Pat, Troy, you can correct me if I do say something wrong from the operational side. So even though we're reducing some of these projects, there's still lots of funding there for life cycle. So really, part of this process here is, if you recall, in Q1 and in the budget, there was a $39 million gap in our budget from upper tier provincial funding. We haven't got that confirmation yet. So part of our mitigation strategy is to do whatever we can to make sure we can kind of fill that gap, if you will. So part of this closure now it'll bring our reserves to 32 million. So at least we have a strategy in place as a backstop towards that 39. So through the closure process, Pat and Renee and team, they're going through, okay, when exactly do we need to spend this cash flow in terms of the budget we have? So some things are able to be delayed, and that will be revisited in the 2024 budget. So we'll do a reprofile of our needs as we do every year. And based on these needs today, there's no risk to the life cycle or maintenance of those components that'll come back in. And then as we build the 2024 budget, we'll start reframing that. Okay, what is our new need for 2024, and kind of reframe it that way.
Thanks. I guess fundamentally, I'm concerned about deferring life cycle spending and offloading that requirement to future budgets, because the money that goes back into reserves is not going to be available for a rainy day after this year. We're going to spend that reserve funding, right? It's so then we're going to go into those life cycle capital investments in a subsequent year without the reserves to backstop that spending. So that's my concern. Like I know you need to do it, but that's a concern that I have.
So I can say here that none of what you see on this list defers any work that we ought to do this year.
Okay.
If ever there is a time when we need your authority to not proceed with important work in order to meet some financial requirements, we will bring you that recommendation. In this case, these are, largely this is about tidying up accounts, but the ones you're focusing on are places where we have the ability to return that money to reserve, because though our projection is we will need to do that work eventually, we don't need to do that work this calendar year.
Okay. In line 6, LRT detour hours funding for stage 2 LRT, we need $2.5 million more than was authorized to do that. I'm going to assume some of that is my fault around the western end of the detour. So $2.5 million in station customer improvements in 2022 won't be done. Can I get a flavor for what those customer station improvements would have been had we spent that money this year?
We didn't have that was an amount approved in 22 to do some general work. There were at this point no specifics attached to it.
Okay.
Again, if we had specifics attached to it and we said we would be able to do this, if not for that, we'd bring that to you as a recommendation. But because we didn't have a specific project tagged for that work at this date, then we have the ability to use it to shift it over to that other need that we do have, which is to continue to fund the detour operations around the construction.
Excellent, thank you. And then finally, a big one is, I just want to make sure I understand the contractual life cycle payment O-Train line 1 under line item 5. there was a contractual life cycle payment, O-Train line 1 of 2.25 million. That is a new authority within this, funded by a number of what appear to be investments that you can put off. So what is that transfer?
Chair, this is, I cannot disclose info that we had discussed in camera.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm seeing no more questions on this item. We do have a number of report recommendations, though, that we need to carry. So are the report recommendations for item 5.1 carried?
Carried.
Thank you. We are going to take a 5-minute recess before we continue with the next item, which will be item 6.1, the customer marketing and readiness campaign. So, well, let's say 11:15 to round it off. 11:15, we'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we will be restarting in just a minute. All right, we're going to get going as soon as we have quorum around the table. All right, we are going to continue here with item 6.1. This is the customer marketing and readiness campaign for stage 2 O-Train extensions. And happy to turn it over to staff for this.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. J'aimerais peut-être dans un premier temps vous présenter.
First of all, I'd like to introduce Michelle Spencer, who's our interim director, strategic communication and external relations. She will present our customer readiness and the marketing strategy for stage 2 extensions. She is with Amanda Thompson, that you may not be so familiar with, but she's working in the background. She does excellent work too.
So while this plan does contain marketing elements, it really is the communication plan for the launch of lines 2 and 4 and beyond. This is part of our rail operational readiness program. It has been specially designed for our city to ensure that residents have the information they need to navigate the expanded system safely and confidently. This will work to generate positive interest among residents in the lead up to opening. I'm proud that this project has been developed to enhance OC Transpo's reaffirmed commitment to building public trust by improving communications with customers and residents alike. This is yet another part of what we at OC Transpo call our reset with both customers and councillors. This presentation will show you a new look and feel to our communications about rail, and I believe that it's a solid plan, but it's not just about the look and feel. It's representative of our commitment to meeting the expectations of Transit Commission, of Council, of most importantly, of residents. And it's not only about rail either. This look and feel will gradually be incorporated into how we communicate overall, not just for rail. It will signify our commitment to connecting our communities, to connecting with you, and to connecting with Ottawa. Since the day I joined OC Transpo, I've been working to ensure that we better measure as we better manage. And at our presentation of the public inquiry, I indicated that I was first and foremost committed to rebuilding our relationships. With the roadmap you will see after this presentation, you will see that transparency and trust are at the forefront in our planning. This communications plan is one of many next steps to delivering on those commitments. I will turn now over to you, Lisa. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Madame Milkar. Good morning, Chair Gower and Commission members. I'm going to bring my mic. Nous sommes heureux d'être ici parmi vous aujourd'hui et nous sommes
We're
heureux.
proud to be here today with you, and we're happy to introduce this strategy.
Program, and it will support the launch of lines 2 and line 4, as well as subsequent launches of the O-Train system. Next slide, please. Today, we'll review the campaign strategy. We'll provide a look at the creative concept. We'll review our campaign tactics. And finally, we'll talk about how we're approaching next steps to implement and measure the campaign. Amanda and I will be sharing the presentation today, and I will turn this part over to her. Next slide, please.
Merci Lisa et bonjour, je m'appelle Amanda Thompson.
Je suis Amanda Thompson, merci.
That will inform and prepare customers and residents to use the system and generate positive interest for the launch of each of the new extensions. We have one main objective and two secondary ones. First and foremost, our job is to ensure our audiences have the information they need to understand and to use the new system. This means that our customers need to be ready day one to ride the system as it expands. We're also aiming to continue to build trust in OC Transpo through high quality, accurate, and user-friendly information, and to increase ridership by informing and engaging residents, visitors, and stakeholders about the new and improved services. Next slide, please.
Our campaign strategy is informed by a number of different factors. First, we conducted customer journey mapping workshops with our staff in 2021 to better understand our customers' journeys on the new and expanded lines, to identify the key changes associated with the opening of the 3 extensions, and to determine the information customers will need to successfully navigate their journey. With that context from our own system, together with our vendor, Ackart Communications, we conducted an extensive audit of comparator transit agencies who have also launched expansions to their systems and what they did as part of their campaigns. Key takeaways from this review of industry best practices include communicating early and often to those who would be most impacted by transit system changes to facilitate a good user experience, striking a balance between citywide messaging to generate excitement and neighborhood-specific messaging to provide practical information for local audiences. And finally, building a sense of pride and ownership in the system and in the city by transparently keeping residents informed about what's happening. Finally, we've applied the lessons that we've learned from the Ready for Rail campaign from stage 1. There are several elements that will further develop this time around, including building flexibility into the campaign to respond to project realities or changes in schedules, messaging that sets realistic expectations about operations and potential pain points, and focusing on explaining mitigation plans to handle system disruptions and to support our customers. This strategy for transparency and openness mirrors what OC Transpo is doing more broadly in its communications. For instance, with our new content on octranspo.com, our more proactive social media content, our storytelling, and our behind-the-scenes perspective on things like the Next Stop blog. Next slide, please.
So we know stage 2 is different from stage 1. So while we're building on our lessons learned from the opening of line 1, we also recognize that stage 2 differs from that original system launch. First off, this is happening in distinct phases over several years. And this is also not the dramatic multimodal transformation that occurred in stage 1 with the closure of the core transitway and the conversion to rail, nor does it mean a complete citywide transformation of the bus network. So in terms of its direct impacts on customers, stage 2 is much more geographically focused and will affect certain parts of the city at different times. The other big difference is that most of our customers are now very familiar with using the O train. So they understand navigating the stations, making transfers between buses and trains, and they're generally aware of accessibility and safety features on line 1. There are new things with stage 2, with the stage 2 expansions that customers will need to be familiar with. And those include vehicles, multimodal connections, train-to-train transfers, and system wayfinding. So finally, there are 2 overarching factors in addition that we are constantly using as a check on our campaign strategy. The first is the low ridership level relative to pre-pandemic levels, and a decreased level of trust and brand perception of OC Transpo following several years of service that has not met expectations. So next, Lisa will discuss our target audiences in a bit more detail. Next slide, please.
As the final step in our strategy planning, we developed profiles of 12 customer groups to ensure that messages reach and resonate with specific target audiences. Among some examples of those target groups are the hybrid workforce, youth and students, persons with disabilities, new Canadians, and tourists. When preparing messages, we use each profile to consider the unique customer journey and the needs of each group to prioritize information and to ensure that the campaign is effective. We used market research, internal focus groups, and customer journey mapping to refine these audience groups. And we are also guided by the city's equity and inclusion lens and our anti-racism, gender equity, and inclusion branch. Next slide, please.
So we're now very excited to introduce our creative concept for the campaign. You may have noticed that this presentation looks different, and that's because we're using the campaign look and feel in this presentation. So our theme is Connections Move You. And this is not meant to be a campaign slogan that we will put on ads all over the place, but it's an idea that we hope that the campaign will convey. So the goals in developing this creative and this theme were to reflect Ottawa and its transit system maturing into a big city, to reflect new neighborhood connections that will be made as part of stage 2, to be authentic and rider-centric, to represent Ottawa's diversity, and ultimately, as we've mentioned, we see this creative as the beginning of a brand refresh for OC Transpo more broadly. Next slide, please.
Here are some more examples of how the concept could look at your bus stop, for instance, and on your phone. We also have a short video to further introduce and illustrate this new concept. Je suis désolée que la version française de cette vidéo ne soit pas disponible.
The French version of this video is not available for now. It will be available next week online in both languages. In the future, we'll make sure that all video presented are bilingual.
The O train is moving forward. It's growing and improving. It's expanding and creating opportunities. It's vibrant and connected. From north to south, east to west, bringing the city together. The O train will move you from station to station and line to line. You'll also make connections along the way. Get to work or school, shop, start a vacation, come together with friends, or simply enjoy the ride. The O train expansion is happening now. Connections move us.
We have tested this concept, and we're continuing to make final refinements as the campaign approaches. Next slide, please.
So our campaign will leverage multiple channels to reach as many people as possible. First, the primary source of information will be a new website dedicated to the O train extensions. So anyone looking for information about how the future service will work will be directed to this offshoot of octranspo.com. The website is currently in final development and is scheduled to launch this summer. We will also leverage our social media channels, including OC Transpo's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts as a critical part of the campaign, especially to reach current transit customers, and we'll have content that's tailored to each of those platforms. To ensure we're also reaching customers and residents through non-digital channels, there will be many other products created, including printed brochures, posters, maps, and materials for outreach, as well as videos and interactive 360-degree tours for trains and stations. Because the O-Train extensions are also connecting communities across Ottawa, we're also identifying key partnerships with organizations and employers along the lines to explore opportunities for cross-promotion. We're going to create a simple, easy to share campaign toolkit that we'll be providing to these organizations across the city. And we'll also have resources to provide to you as members of Council and Transit Commission to engage with your residents and stakeholders as part of the effort to build a positive interest and readiness for the openings. And in addition, we're also looking at opportunities for sponsorships across the city that may be part of the opening of the expanded system. Next slide, please.
In addition, we're planning a robust campaign, including targeted direct mail, advertising on billboards, radio, and streaming audio, as well as digital and social media ads. The combined reach of all of these paid channels is estimated to be 83% of adults over 18 in Ottawa and will deliver an estimated 42 million impressions. So just to understand that, that's 42 million pairs of eyeballs that will see it. So you may see it multiple times, which is what we want in order to ensure retention of the messages. Our no-cost city-owned advertising properties, such as digital screens in city facilities and advertisements on buses and bus shelters, will also contribute to the reach of these campaigns. We are using a heavily data-driven approach to focus our paid media on the best channels at the right times with the right messages. The approach is based on market data and will be adjusted as we go based on the performance of the campaign. So we have the option to be able to tweak as the campaign moves along. For the launch of lines 2 and 4, we plan to be in market with paid advertising for about 12 weeks total, beginning up to 6 weeks before the launch and continuing for several weeks after. We'll be creating a buzz from the start, though, updating our information throughout and keeping everyone informed. We know that flexibility is critical, so the plan allows us to change dates based on construction and launch plans, etc. Next slide, please.
So as part of outreach activities, our events will build excitement and familiarity with residents early by having activities at local stations. So for instance, we've already hosted a Doors Open event on June the 3rd, which included the OC Transpo training simulator, as well as the Stadler Flirt train showcase at Greenboro Station. So we are hoping to do similar open house style events along the line as we approach each of the openings. Our goal really here with events and outreach activities is to create buzz in the community, increase familiarity with the new stations and our vehicles, and demonstrate how OC Transpo is preparing to operate the system in order to build confidence and trust with our customers. And then prior to opening, we will also be holding a large marquee a launch event with council, funding partners, special guests, and the media. Next slide, please.
The overall budget for the launch of lines 2 and 4 is $1 million. This is an investment, we believe, in planning and creative development, as well as campaign events, community outreach, materials, videos, graphics, interactive media, paid advertising, and will be continually measured to ensure that we're being cost effective. In reviewing comparator transit agencies, this budget positions us well within our industry best practices and is in line with the scope of the campaign. It's also worth noting that this campaign will provide essential information for customers who are navigating the expanded system, including safety messaging, and it's an important step in attracting new riders. The investment is a new creative approach that is part of a broader refresh for OC Transpo, meaning that the resulting approach will be used far beyond just this O-Train extension campaign. For each subsequent launch, we'll review the budget and scope of what we did before and adjust based on what worked and what didn't. We'll seek feedback from our audiences. We'll have feedback from the latest results and survey research research and survey results. And we will have location-specific strategies related to the launch in question. Next slide, please.
So we know from a recent survey that there's already a high general awareness in our community about the O-Train expansions. So we want to build on this. And so we'll be ramping up with the launch of our website over the summer. And then along with that launch, we will also be increasing our Line 2 and Line 4 content on OC Transpo's organic social media channels. Our main campaign, including the paid advertising, is planned to launch in the late summer or early fall, depending on the timelines for the opening of the South Extension. And our overall campaign is designed to adapt as we open new extensions, to be measured and adjusted our approach, and we will be incorporating lessons learned along the way. Next slide, please.
I'd like to thank Amanda for coming along with me. This concludes our presentation. Thank you, Chair and Commission members. We're happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you for the update. We'll go to councillors. So Councillor Carr, you had the first hand up.
Thanks. I tried to switch with Councillor Lowe, but he wants to go second. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm excited about the launch. I just have a few questions. First of all, you mentioned that you'd be working with key partners and stakeholders. Can you give an example of who those would be? Because my finding is no one ever knows how to take the, we've got lots of destinations in this city, and often when you ask them, how do you get here? They don't have the information. Like, are you looking at working with different, like Ottawa tourism, different institutions like the hospital? I've got the hospitals in my ward. Talking about how easy it is to get there on the LRT. Like, could you explain a little bit who these partner stakeholders would be?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So as you said, there are a number of destinations along Line 2 and 4. So in the south, particularly for the opening later this year. And so we would be looking at exploring partnerships with, for instance, Carleton University, the airport, the EY Center. So these are places that OC Transpo already has a relationship with, and we would certainly want to build on it to help them promote to their customers or student bodies, what have you, that how to get to those destinations. And then certainly as we look in the east and the west, there's multiple destinations. And as the campaign grows, we would be looking at partnerships that we could explore to sort of tell that larger story about all of the places that the system now will connect.
Okay, thank you. I noticed the budget, the initial budget's $1 million. I know previously at budget, we'd approved $600,000 for a campaign targeting the federal public service workers to get back to work. I don't know that have we seen that campaign for the federal public service workers? That's already out there. Okay, so there's no way to merge. Is there a way to merge any of that, the messaging there at all, or is that completely separate? Because you talked a lot about targeting hybrid workers. Now they're back in office. If you could just speak to that.
It's a separate message, right? The first message is really, now that you're back at work, here's the system that's available to you. This is more of a Line 2, Line 4 specific message. So, while we will be targeting hybrid workers, it's a different kind of thread of messaging. So we'd have to be very careful to make sure that we're addressing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, no, understood. Absolutely. And, thinking back to when Line 1 was launched, and is there anything in the message that's going to acknowledge with Line 2 and 4 messages about safety, people's concerns, or acknowledging it all in the campaign that, things didn't go as expected? Or is there any of that sort of, because you can make that fun in a way, and reassurance? Just wondering about the messaging.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. in preliminary reviews and discussions with the company, that Ackart Communications that's working with us, there has been some subtle nods in the campaign with respect to construction happens, things happen. So this is the kind of approach we're going to be looking at to ensure that, you know, we absolutely do nod to the fact that this is different and this is new and this is exciting.
Thank you. I do think that acknowledgement is really important. Personally, as somebody who was a very active user of Line 1 when it launched. And then could you just speak a little bit about how you'll measure the success of the campaign?
Thank you for the question. So we have a number of metrics that we'll be tracking in terms of success based on the channels we're using. So our paid advertising, as Lisa spoke to, there will be metrics associated with that. For our website, we're looking at click-throughs, page visits, length of time on a page. Social media, we will have a whole other set of metrics there. And so we're trying to ensure that our tactics are flexible so that if we're seeing areas that are being more successful or less successful, we'll adjust based on the metrics as they are being created.
Thanks. And then just,
I was just going to add on, if I might, Mr. Chair, to Amanda's response. And I think that it's important to understand that the availability of metrics, of metric availability is so much faster even now than it was in 2018, 2019. So the ability that we have and the flexibility that we have to tweak the campaigns to ensure that we're hitting the right audience at the right time is so much more amplified than it ever was. So we're going to be able to do that and respond, you know, with grace and with quickness and agility. So I think we'll be in good shape there.
Okay, excellent. And this is not a very smart question. Are there paper copies of the lines? Like, is there anywhere where you can grab paper copies these days of routes? Like in the olden days when you would go to the library and you'd get copies of the routes. Does that exist anymore? What?
So Chair, through you, during COVID, they used to, pre-COVID, they used to print the sort of like slips of route information, individual route information. That was discontinued prior to COVID. And I believe during the pandemic, we weren't printing them. I don't believe we have returned to printing those. As part, though, I can say as part of the stage 2 launches, while we may not print individual bus route maps, there would be certainly hard copy materials prepared that would be provided. And one of the things that we did in stage 1 that was quite successful that we intend to do around each of the launches is to actually provide a mail out hard copy information about both the train service as well as how bus routes are changing prior to the launch in the geographical areas as they're affected.
Hey, thanks. You answered my question well, although I didn't ask it well, but thank you very much.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. This is a great presentation, and I think that I want to compliment the graphic design of the campaign. Like, this kind of takes us out of the late 2000s and into 2023, if I may speak frankly. There was something that you alluded to during the presentation. Excuse me, during the presentation. Is this going to eventually become like the brand of OC Transpo, or is this specifically a Line 2, Line 4 launch look and feel?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I don't know whether it's going to become sort of the overall, it's not going to necessarily replace the OC Transpo logo or anything, but it's going to become a part of all of the communications we do. So you're going to see elements of that in our social media posts, on our website. And it'll be a gradual transition because we don't necessarily want to confuse the message that we're trying to deliver on lines 2 and 4, but you're going to see those elements start to be incorporated. We've done it a few times. We did it with at our open house. We had some some posters there with some of those graphic elements. So we're just kind of doing it very gradually. So it's not a stripped down rebrand. It's a gradual incorporation of a new look and feel that just modernizes what we're doing.
Thank you. And yeah, that's what I meant, the communications materials. I don't mean the logo. I don't mean the livery and all that stuff. You mentioned that there are sponsorship opportunities. Are you able to expand a little more on what you're looking at? Because I'm thinking like IKEA things at Queensview Station, like a bench or something that's going to fall apart, or like Bowesville Station being called Bowes Lug Tread Station or something.
Those are, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Those are all within the realm of possibility to some extent. We are looking at all kinds of different options right now. The team is diligently looking at options for what we call station takeovers, very similar to what you see on a website takeover, where a brand takes over a station for a period of time. Overpasses, advertising on those overpasses, other opportunities throughout the lines. So nothing's off the table as far as that kind of sponsorship approach is being taken.
Yeah, probably except the Bose thing. There are some stations right now that kind of already bear the names of some companies, right? Like, companies, entities, institutions, what have you. They're like Carleton Station, Ottawa Station. What's the other one? The third place, Algonquin Station is the other one I'm thinking of. Like, are there existing partnerships there, or were they just named because of the geographic location that people will be familiar with?
They were named because of the geographic location that they have, but that doesn't exclude any sort of possibilities for future sponsorship or opportunities.
Okay, last question. Have you reached out to, or will you reach out to home builders who are building around Limebank and Bowesville stations? Because that's kind of the only area of the city where we're actually introducing brand new service with Line 2 being launched. So are those opportunities there in terms of the marketing? Have you exploited them yet? Will you?
Thanks again for the question, Mr. Chair. Again, nothing's outside the realm of possibilities. We have not begun that process just yet. We were waiting for the campaign to be solidified. But again, that's a great idea. We'd be happy to take it away.
Cool, great, thank you.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My question is kind of a follow-on from Councillor Carr and very specific to federal public servants. How engaged are we with that stakeholder group in terms of their kind of organic support internal to the organization to kind of message this on our behalf and to support this program? Is that the type of stakeholder relationship that we're talking about? Or is it simply, kind of, I guess I'm just curious to unpack that a little bit, because I see, a great opportunity for us to, use this marketing campaign to really springboard an opportunity to rebrand this product to our hybrid workers.
Chair, through you. So as part of the hybrid worker campaign that the other councillor mentioned earlier, we have developed some relationships with different federal departments. And so certainly as part of the stage 2 launches, we will be sharing new information with them in the hopes of reaching their employees and in an effort to encourage the use of the system as each of the opens occur. And certainly, there is an opportunity there when we talk about building customer confidence and growing ridership as a result, that these are certainly potential customers that we would like to attract to the system as it expands.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. I'm having a deja vu moment because I remember sitting in that seat and talking about the public campaign for the rollout of Line 1, and there was actually some opposition from management at that time to engage in a fulsome plan, and I'm very happy to see what we have before us today. One thing that I asked last time is that we consider when lines 2 and 4 open to make it free for a weekend or a short period of time. You want to particularly target not just the former riders of the line. Welcome back. See the line now. It's much longer. We've expanded it. We've added stations. But also you want to attract and appeal to the people who don't normally take that route. And so one great way would be, I know when we opened Line 1 that morning, it was free for a period of time, but we really need to get people exposed to these routes. So I'll park that with you. Your marketing in particular, what we did at the, eventually staff warmed up to a printed flyer or bulletin that was mailed to people in Ottawa. This was a major opening of this line. Are you considering within the vicinity of lines 2 and 4 to do that? Say, hey, you've got an expanded line in your neighborhood. You're very close to it. Can you just elaborate on that, please?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the direct mail is a part of the campaign, has been incorporated as part of the campaign, and a lot of sort of geo-targeted aspects like that are a part of the campaign, absolutely.
I don't expect people in Orleans to get a flyer about what's happening near the airport, but obviously that's important. Signage in the airport. I was just in Pearson last week. There's signage that directs you to not just public transit, but the private line that runs to downtown. Can you just elaborate your discussions with the airport? Because I don't know, I would assume the airport is in control of signage that exists within the actual building as opposed to the station themselves. How are we going to direct people when they come off their plane that this is the direction to go to the train?
Chair, I will ask Pat to answer that question, please.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Yeah, our team's working really closely with with their colleagues, the signage people at the Airport Authority, and all indications are that the signage is really going to be excellent. If you go and look, it's already starting to look good now. The big red O is already up. The ticket machines are there. The signage is there, and it's all going to be very easy. And we're talking to them about all kinds of things about how we can integrate it into all the information they provide travelers.
Okay, that's good. Just the level where one takes the train is obviously different. That's level 3 than level 1, where people come out of either the domestic or the international baggage claim area. I want to make sure that there's no confusion that this is the direction, turn left, go upstairs to get that train. The last thing I want to raise is something that is predominantly I see in Europe, and that's ticket bundling. And what I mean by that is when someone buys a ticket on a train or an airplane, they have the opportunity to pre-purchase public transit tickets. And I think on some flights, even to Toronto recently, I was given the opportunity to buy the train ticket that connects Pearson with Union Station. And I would like staff to take under consideration, even have a direction prepared if needed, as I would like to see OC Transpo work with Via Rail Canada and select airlines who serve our airport on the opportunity for them to sell their customers public transit tickets so that they can print off, they prepay, they land or they arrive in Ottawa, they hop on LRT. They've already bought their tickets. They don't have to queue up. They're good to go. Can you just comment on this, please?
Thank you, Chair. You're bang on, because I have started the discussion with Via Rail in the past. Unfortunately, we know that the former CEO has left, but now we have a new one. And this week I had a DLT with my team, and one of the things that we talk about, it's exactly that, and we'll make it happen for sure, and we'll let you know.
Could I just leave that with you and the chair that at some point later this autumn, you provide us an update on where we are with that? I think this is a great opportunity for us. Customer pays, we get the funds later, but it's just to get more people, particularly who aren't familiar with Ottawa, using our public transit service. So thank you.
Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation. I like the use of color besides red. The last thing you want, obviously, is politicians talking about how to best market. So I'll leave that one alone. But it's a nice direction. Is one of the groups that you're looking at, I'm going to be very on brand for a moment, cyclists? The excitement among cyclists about how they're going to be able to move around the city is becoming really palpable. Will we be helping cyclists understand how they can incorporate LRT into their moving around the city?
So Chair, through you, the answer is yes. One of the things that we want to, through this campaign, encourage or build awareness of is the number of multimodal connections. And we're building 25 kilometers of pathways. We're building multiple pedestrian bridges. There are so many ways to access these new stations and the existing system as a result of the Stage 2 project. So we want to ensure that there's awareness throughout the community of those connections, but also, you know, for cyclists in particular, that there are options in terms of reaching the system and then what their trip looks like from there.
And with materials that show them what it will look like. I mean, that Sadler's got a funk ton of bicycle space on board, right? I think we need to show people what that's going to look like, and they can start to cover some real miles across the city if they incorporate LRT into multimodal trips. So I'm glad to hear that's on your radar. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Vice Chair Curry.
Just very quickly, the BIAs, obviously, yes. Because Canada North Business Association, really just a advertisement that would indicate people could just get an express bus after Moody right to the tech park would be wonderful. And then Marty, we're ignoring Marty. And then the other is the Canada Central BIA and everyone else's too, where you want to tell the students not how to necessarily just get to university, but to get to their job quickly from university or college or wherever they're coming from. Anyway, wonderful. Thanks.
I had a couple questions just following up. The campaign persona is really interesting. I'm just wondering where those came from. Was it from existing OC Transpo data or other sources that you came up with the persona?
The personas were developed by our own internal research through journey mapping, as well as by our consultant that we're using. They have done market research, et cetera, to determine sort of who is riding the bus, how are they riding, how are they getting there, and who do we need to appeal to. So it was done through market research.
And I know you had that example in the presentation, and there's a bit of info in the report. Maybe an example of how those personas might have already given you ideas about how you're targeting different messaging and communications. Can you give us an example?
So there were a lot to think of. I remember seeing the campaign and seeing the diversity that's being proposed within the scope of the advertising, Mr. Chair. But Amanda helps me recall that, you know, having our materials translated into many languages for new Canadians is another way that by which we can achieve that and ensure that we're getting the message across to as many people as possible.
Okay, and I know it was mentioned you looked at some other cities for best practices. Are there any cities worth noting that have been recognized for a good job in marketing major new transit initiatives?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that, Mr. Chair, but I can get back to you.
I'm just curious. So, okay, thank you. Any other questions before we wrap? Okay, is this item received then? Received. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing it rolling out. Okay, we will continue on. Our next item we have is 6.2, Transit Services 5-year roadmap. We have a presentation from staff. We have one speaker on this item, so we'll begin with the presentation. René.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm nervous today, which is unusual, but it's because I'm so excited to present this product to you.
Draft 5-year roadmap to you today. Today's presentation represents the work of many months in consultation with my directors and with our management team in transit services. At the same time, it is just the beginning of the work we plan to achieve over the next 5 years. I'm excited to share our vision of the future with you. Next slide, please. Our 5-year roadmap evolved out of the previous practice of annual business plans. This was the previous one. This is the new one. which were effective in setting annual priorities, but failed to provide a longer-term vision of where our city's transit system was headed. The timing is right for an involved reporting process as Ottawa finds itself in a period of dynamic change and renewal. This context creates opportunities for alignment with our city's new draft strategic plan, which was tabled at council yesterday, our new council and its priorities, the new perspectives emanating from the refreshed departmental leadership team within transit services, and the driving needs to reassess and realign municipal services in the aftermath of the pandemic. With these opportunities in mind, we have built a document that is focused on our customers and incorporates information from many sources, including feedback from our customers and staff, directions from council, and consultations with our stakeholders. Next slide, please. Our departmental leadership team began building our roadmap in August 2022 with a series of facilitated interviews with small groups of managers from across our department. In early September, our departmental leadership team held an intensive 2-day planning process, working with an external facilitator. That process focused on answering 3 questions. Where has OC Transpo come from? Who are we now as an organization? What future would we like to build for transit in Ottawa? Throughout the fall of 2022, my directors and I worked to refine and develop our roadmap, its strategic initiatives, and the supporting key performance indicators. Once the structure of the roadmap was complete, we introduced it to our larger management team to test our vision and path forward. In November and December 2022 into January this year, my directors and I led information sessions with our frontline staff to ensure this vision was clear to the people who deliver services directly to our customers. These sessions took place across the organization in all of our various garages and facilities and at various points during the day and night shift. It was important for me to bring the message to as many of our staff as possible on site during their shift to listen to their feedback. Next slide, please. When we asked our managers what OC Transpo's greatest strength was, their answer was clear. It's our people. When we asked what lessons we needed to learn from our past, they told us to communicate clearly throughout our organization, listen to our people at all levels and invest in them, celebrate our successes and our people, plan deeply, particularly for transitions, build a common purpose and vision to bring to our stakeholders. Next slide, please. When we asked our managers what their vision was for OC Transpo, they were bold and ambitious about our future. They told us they would like to be part of the fabric of our city, inspire pride, operate calmly, reliably, create an environment that is respectful and positive, look after our people and embrace innovation, transform and change OC Transpo's reputation and the face of the city. Next slide, please. This new roadmap sets a bold vision to guide our efforts over the next 5 years, as well as a robust set of key performance indicators to keep us on track and provide transparency and accountability to City Council. We are bringing it to you today as a draft. We would like to hear your feedback and answer your questions. We know that our roadmap will need to adapt to align with the city's strategic plan and the new council priorities. Even once the roadmap is approved, it will be a living document reviewed and refined yearly to take advantage of new ideas, technologies, and for sure, learnings. Next slide, please. Our 5-year roadmap consists of a vision of who we want to be, a mission that sets out how we are going to achieve the vision, foundational pillars that set out what is most important to us, and strategic initiatives to prioritize our efforts for the next 5 years. Everything aligns with our vision. Proud to be your choice to get there. Vous transportez avec fierté là où vous voulez. OC Transpo's vision
To
speaks
carry you with pride where you want.
and choice. We would like to earn Ottawa's pride in the service we provide. We would like our customers to be proud of their public transit system and happy to use it. We would like our own staff to be proud of their service they provide and the work that they do. To achieve our vision, we have defined our mission in 3 statements. We connect and build Ottawa's communities. We promise to deliver safe, clean, dependable, and accessible public transit. We put our people and our customers first. OC Transpo's mission speaks to the commitments our organization makes to move us closer to our vision. Connecting and caring for communities. Respecting our customers by providing a consistently safe and excellent service that is accessible by all. Prioritizing safety and centering the needs of people in all of our decisions. This is our mission. Next slide, please. To support the vision and the mission, we have 5 foundational pillars. Our people, our customers, our service, our assets, our finances. We have arranged these 5 foundations in a circle to make it clear that they are all equally important and dependent upon each other. Without all 5, we cannot achieve anything, and each one needs to be prioritized, invested, and supported. Next slide, please. Within each pillar, we have defined strategic initiatives, 22 in total. The strategic initiatives are significant projects that are each led by one of our directors. An overarching commitment to safety is integrated into all strategic initiatives. For our people, we will engage with our staff in new ways to listen to their ideas and help develop them as professionals. We will ensure our department is diverse and inclusive. We will build a true culture of safety and improve communications to keep our people better informed about what's happening in our department. For our customers, we will be enhancing our services by deploying new fare systems, transforming our communications, and exploring various other transit solutions, such as on-demand transit. For service, we will stabilize our service delivery and increase reliability by reviewing our transit routes and managing operations through data key performance indicators. For our asset, we will be delivering stage 2 light rail and our new e-bus fleet alongside long-range operational planning, all of which involves systematizing our departmental administrative processes. For our finances, we will be working on delivering our next long-range financial plan, reviewing our business models, and also strategically reviewing how we manage our assets. This may sound like a lot to accomplish. However, many of these initiatives are already in progress. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, our roadmap has evolved out of the annual business plan process. Our staff reviewed the business plan to ensure that we continue to move forward with the priorities we previously brought to the Transit Commission. As you can see on this slide, the priorities identified in the 2022 annual business plan have all been incorporated into one or more of the strategic initiatives within the roadmap. Next slide, please. One of the fundamental strategic initiatives identified in our roadmap is called Measure to Manage. This represents a fundamental shift in the management philosophy at Transit Services. Our management team is committed to managing through measurement and data, reporting transparently on defined KPIs, and holding ourselves, including me for sure, accountable for the targets we set. This has been the basis for the kinds of presentations and information we have been bringing to the Transit Commission during this term of council. We will track our success in adapting this new philosophy through the number of tracking and reporting mechanisms implemented, the percentage of KPIs within our roadmap that we update and report to the Transit Commission, and the percentage of KPIs targets that we reach. Next slide, please. The next phase of the development of our roadmap will involve finalizing and setting goals for each of the KPIs identified on our scorecard. We will continue to bring regular reports to Council on our progress through updates to the Transit Commission. Selected metrics will continue to be updated on octranspo.com to keep our customers informed. Internally, our staff will be providing updates on our KPIs to management, and our directors will be accountable for meeting the targets set. Through the 5-year roadmap, OC Transpo is making a strong commitment to transparency. This plan will hold us accountable by allowing Council and the public to monitor our progress. Through this, we hope to improve trust in our organization and the services we provide to the public. Next slide, please. I want to take the opportunity that I have today to say a huge thank you to you, Chair, to councillors, to give us this opportunity to present to you this document. I'm nervous today, and this is very rare, but I'm very proud of this because it's 5 years ahead. We need that. And we see where we will be in 5 years. And I can tell you, it's nice to see. My colleagues and I are looking forward to coming back to the Transit Commission in September after the break, as you know. And we'll have a full agenda to updates to bring before you in the fall, including, even if I have said it before, an update on our root cause analysis, freezing rain, lightning strikes, etc. An update on the axle bearing investigation, an update on our action plan to respond to the public inquiry, and more and more. Merci beaucoup. Je suis prête à répondre à toutes vos questions.
Thank you. I'm ready to answer all your questions.
On hold for a moment. We have a delegation joining us. Sam Hirsch. I see you there. Good morning. Or are we morning or afternoon? Good morning, Sam. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'll begin then. Hello, I'm here today to speak to the 5-year plan and specifically on the on-demand transit pilot project that is given, very little detail in this particular report, though I know it was spoken in a bit more greater detail at the beginning, after the staff presentation. But, first, je voulais premièrement cette partie en français à Madame Amalcar.
I just wanted to say to Mrs. Amilcar that as a resident, I'm concerned with the staff presentation on the options about the on-demand transit service and the decision of putting this new system in because, the ridership level is very low. Instead of improving the dependability of the system, we decided to cut the service for this service, and it's really concerning for some people. Bon.
One of the options around deciding where to put on-demand services where ridership is low, instead of investing in our system to up ridership in a specific area and improve reliability, we're instead deciding to cut service, thereby potentially implementing on-demand if that's the option that we're going with. And, I and other groups I've worked with in the past, like the Ottawa Transit Riders, Free Transit Ottawa, and the Union Local here representing transit workers have less issue with the second option, areas where no transit exists, as this could potentially work as we've seen elsewhere, but where it replaces existing routes is in essence a cut to service. On-demand transit or microtransit, as often been dubbed, is usually passed as some miracle silver bullet to solving a city's transit woes, but it is not that, and it's especially concerning when it's used, as I said, as a way to, as we have heard some councillors already allude to, cut or lower costs. The issue that many councillors bring up, and the issue that was brought up when this concept was most recently revived in the spring of 2021, when former councillor Meehan had brought up concerns over empty buses and over our system being more profitable. But transit is a public service, and people will ride it whether it's profitable or not. And many rely on these neighborhood routes. And people often say, how microtransit or on-demand transit, or whatever you want to call it, isn't in competition with transit that runs on fixed routes. And that may be true when you're talking about coverage, but they may not be competing for customers, but they're competing for funds. And when a transit agency invests in microtransit subsidies, it's doing this instead of running more fixed route service. And that's the frame in which we need to understand this proposal. And, we're talking about, in this case, low density, unwalkable areas where ridership expectations are low for whatever service might be offered. And in most agencies, the worst performing suburban fixed routes typically pick up, I've seen a study, about 10 people for every hour a bus operates. And I'm not sure that, as studies have shown, that microtransit or on-demand transit actually is a better alternative. A recent or a study from 2019 from the Eno Foundation found that, two pilot programs achieved less than 1 passenger trip per vehicle service per hour. A decent fixed route bus has 20 to 100 passengers, and most bad fixed routes have at least 10 passengers per hour. And the best data that this foundation could find was a micro transit project in Newark, California, that achieves 3 passengers per hour, but that's down from the average of 10 passengers per hour with a fixed route. So the transit agency lost 20% of the old route's ridership when it made this change, and that was the most helpful data point that can be cited. So, even if your goal is coverage, why would you run a microtransit route or an on-demand transit route instead of a fixed route? And again, I'm not saying that it's a absolutely terrible idea, but again, as data some data has shown, and in some cities like Guelph and Edmonton, where it has been outsourced to a private service, where I'm not saying that this is what OC Transpo wants to propose, but it hasn't worked well and has raised costs and has seen worse service. So, you know, on-demand transit is a Band-Aid idea for a transit system that needs broad reform. We should be talking about expanding dedicated bus lanes, community routes, and other services, and taking what works about this and incorporating into a system is worthy of discussion. But we can't sacrifice service quality, affordability, or public oversight through, you know, things that might be private partnerships or substitutes for poor transit planning. You know, in a time when our transit system has faced significant upheaval after COVID, and now including a significant pressure as a result of the capital budget cuts and lack of operational funding from other levels of government, the last thing we need is what will essentially be a service cut, if we're talking about it in the context of lowering cost and replacing existing routes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any questions for Mr. Hirsch? Councillor Carr has a question for you.
Hi, Sam, thanks a lot for your presentation. I'm curious when you talked about on-demand transit not being successful in Edmonton. I'm from Edmonton, spend a lot of time there, and there where they've incorporated it and they've used it specifically for in cases where there's seniors residents. Seniors actually have felt safer using it in these cases. They also use it for attractions and in places where the demand wasn't high. And, you know, oftentimes they found it more convenient, more accessible in terms of not waiting at a bus stop for a long time, being able to call the system right away. And I just was curious about your experience with the Edmonton system based on your comment that it wasn't successful there, because it's quite contrary to what my experience has been and what I've heard.
Well, I haven't used it specifically myself, but you know, I have. Well, one of the issues with it, I think, is that they partner with a private system, or a private company, which I think is an issue, and it's not something that I think we'd want to see here in Ottawa, based off, you know, what I've heard from some folks. But I think part of it that I've heard too is that in several cases, like the peak time, wait time is still pretty high in some experiences, at least that I've read about. So that's sort of the issues that I've heard. I wouldn't say that it's been like a blatant unsuccessful venture, but I would say that I'm not 100% sure or sold for what I've read that it is a significant improvement from what might be an otherwise fixed route. And like I said, I think there are some instances where you know, and like where it's not used to replace existing routes, but in areas where transit service doesn't exist, it could be successful. But you know, and we have seen that in some places, but there are certainly you know, issues with it, especially in the context that I'm hearing I've heard some people talk about the implementation of it here, and also how I've heard about you know, OC Transpo speak about it too. So I'm less concerned about one of the areas they're speaking about, but I'm concerned about they're speaking about areas where it's meant to improve, like lower ridership, which is not necessarily what on-demand or like microtransit is intended for. And I don't think that will lead to, like, you know, a higher amount of ridership is sort of what I was more alluding to, if that makes sense. Councillor Carr.
Thanks for your delegation. Yeah, and I take your point about privatization. I thought I read in the documents that we were going to be piloting using existing paratransport buses. So that was something I was happy to read. But thanks again for your delegation.
Thanks.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I kind of want to build on Councillor Carr's point there that we are doing this internally, and yeah. So thank you for your delegation there. And what would you say to a customer or a resident in you know, who lives along the 171 or the 161, or in, you know, in Morgan's Grant, who doesn't get any weekend service right now because we can't provide it at a financially viable way? What would you say to those customers who might receive, you know, even if you provide in the same hours, like 9 to 3 is what the 171 right now runs over the weekend? They're going to get an increased service availability instead of a bus every 3 hours. It's my local route, by the way. But what would you say to those customers? I'm just curious. Well,
what I would say to that is, why don't we just extend the hours for that bus instead of just having on-demand or microtransit? Why don't we just improve hours and invest more in improving that? Because as some studies have shown, like that would having a better, longer fixed route would lead to higher ridership than having an on-demand service in some scenarios, is sort of what I would say. And I mean, there are different scenarios where I think it hasn't worked. And this is sort of not a bit off topic from your question, but like in Guelph, like we've seen where they've had on-demand service for statutory holidays. And that what I've been reading is not something that has worked there, and people have been confused, and the role hasn't been great. So I'm obviously that's something that OC Transpo can address better in terms of if there was a rollout. But I also think that there needs to be more consultation around this and what people think about it, because I think just implementing this without getting feedback from people is a mistake, and we need to hear what people think about it and what they want. I didn't see any plans around that, which I'm also kind of concerned about.
Thanks for your answer there, and thanks for the delegation. And I'm sure the feedback process is going to be part of the pilot process there. So thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing no more questions. So, there is one more. Councillor Tierney. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hirsch, for coming out today. I appreciate it. I actually am listening to some of your points, and I'm thinking, you know, if we were in the electric bus era, absolutely. We're not quite there yet. We're really pressing hard to get to that point. And if this pilot in the short term till we get fully electrified, and I actually respect a lot of the points you're bringing forward about having constant bus routes on a regular basis, but in the short term, the fact that this would probably cut back on GHGs by having on-demand service, would you support it in the short term until there's electrification of buses?
So I appreciate the question. I think that the issue that I take with that sort of point in the logic there is that I and a lot of what we've been seeing, and when there's a cut to a route that happens, there's not I think we don't often see like a reversal of that cut to that route. And I think that like preemptively doing that might mean that, you know, council doesn't come back and say like, oh, we need to bring back that route and make it a not on-demand route and make it a fixed route again. So I think that is sort of problematic. We're looking at it that way. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, having more transit surface in general reduces GHGs, right? As we've seen. So and it takes more people off the road, even in areas where in like suburban areas or less. I mean, I know your ward is sort of like a interesting mix of a bit more denser, a bit more mix between suburban and sort of urban. But you know, I think we need to look at investing more in our system and improving neighborhood routes instead of implementing a system that could lead to, you know, cutting existing routes. I think it's very problematic. Like that like. Again, like I think it can possibly work in places where there's no existing transit routes, and we've seen that, but where it's used to replace existing routes, that is essentially a cut, and that leads to can lead to lower ridership. So I think it's something that I hope this commission keeps in mind when we're seeing. I mean, I would prefer like we, you know, cut back on this idea of microtransit, and so would other groups, and like the, you know, Union Local when I was working with in 2021. Brought up similar concerns, and they obviously need to be consulted on this as well. But you know, so I think there's certainly some things that need to be concerned about and think about before a potential implementation of this program.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your delegation today.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hirsch, for joining us this morning. We'll turn now to questions for staff. Councillor Curry.
Really, this is my main comment, and that is, Madame Amelkar, I see that you're proud of this document, and you should be very proud of it. I've been on many boards where we've created vision statements and mission statements, and it's not an easy feat to come up with a mission statement that's not 10 sentences long when everybody tries to put everything in there. And the vision that you've come up with as a group, I guess everybody in OC Transpo contributed to it, says everything it needs to say for this moment in time about the pride and this choice that we want people to be making. So when you have such a clear vision statement like that, it makes it very easy for governors. I mean, obviously there's 22 measurable priorities. There's 5 pillars. It makes it very easy as governors to then look at those KPIs and ask the questions, does this actually achieve what we wanted to achieve? Is this actually meeting the objectives of our 5 pillars? So I was saying to Rob Snow on the radio this morning, like, as a governor, this is exactly what I want to see. And I think we should be very happy that we have this now, because it gives you really something to work from for the next 5 years. And as you said, it's a living document, but excellent work, very helpful. It's very clearly laid out as to what will be measured and what we can ask about. And I just feel too, for our meetings going forward, it's going to allow us to have very clear conversations about what we're talking about. What pillar are we talking about? And the transparency component of it, where you say, and I've seen on other boards, this pillar, we're not doing very well in this pillar. And that's a good conversation to have. You know, the purpose of governing is not to say, is everything lovely? Oh, wonderful. We'll now end the meeting. But what is actually going on, but not just in any category that seems to come up. So I really appreciated this document, and I was reading it through last night, and I was thinking it's a document, it's many pages, but it was no small feat. And it's really, really important work for all of us. So one other point is just that your comment about how the 5 pillars are interrelated is another one. You know, as we are looking at one pillar compared to another, and we start to blend into topics, we'll have to check ourselves, because everything is interrelated, as it should be. So I really just wanted to make that comment, that I think it is readable and it is understandable, and it's something that we need to all really work from for the next many years. So thank you very much, and congratulations to everybody on this.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a similar sentiment as Councillor Curry. Like, this is an excellent document coming out of a major societal change like we have over the last 3 years. You kind of need something written down like this to help guide the entity towards success. And this is a great way to ensure that we know what we're looking at. We don't lose sight of our goals, and embrace our new reality and ensure that OC Transpo succeeds in this new reality. I'm particularly appreciative of the staff engagement and your plans and goals for staff engagement, because as you know, a former frontline employee, it's no secret, but the pride that staff have in their jobs translates to good service. It translates to lower sick leave. It becomes more, they're more willing to bring forward suggestions and ideas to help further improve the service. And I really hope that, I really hope this leads to an increase in engagement from staff to continue to say, hey, this bus stop can be located there, or I'm, always late on this route. Lastly, just want to recognize the fact that you're recognizing and acknowledging the decreased trust in our reputation. That's kind of taken a little bit of a hit. I think that's an excellent step in just acknowledging, and just embracing the fact that, this has happened, this is where we are, and this is where we're going to work towards. So thank you, and don't have any questions really.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Carr.
My comments are not dissimilar from either Commissioner Curry or Commissioner Lowe. And normally, if someone's already said something, I usually take my hand down. But in this case, I'm not going to, because I think you should be really proud, and I don't think you should be nervous at all. I'm a big fan of strategic planning. And in this 5-year plan that you've laid out, you've covered everything from your workforce to how you're dealing with clients to how you're transforming the business, and looking at it from an angle of service, but also efficiency. And I think it's absolutely amazing. Everything that I wanted to see was in there with respect to improvements to Piot Transpo, and increasing our accessibility, adapting our service. And I think also for the employees of OC Transpo to have a document that they can look at, that they understand that the direction that OC Transpo is going in is really, really important for employee morale. And I just want to say congratulations. I think it's an excellent document, and I'm so glad that we have you.
Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. I will pile on with the positive comments. It's a very solid document, and certainly illustrates the roadmap over the next 5 years. And it really is a good governance tool for us to work directly with you and hold you accountable for this organization. One thing that will come up when we talk about the City Council's work plan for the next term of office is the lack of engagement that members of council have in providing comments on the performance of our senior management team here at the city. It's funny how closely this commission works with you, and yet we are not engaged on sort of a performance assessment and contributing to that process, which is very important. So this is how we do it. We have a document, you have stated objectives, and we have that discussion throughout the term. So my assessment when I was on this commission last term of council is that we were an organization stuck in, this is how we've always done this. And it's finally good to have a professional leading this organization with the experience and skill set that you have to get us looking forward for this organization, and the team that you've brought in and filled out, I think will help us get us there. So congratulations to you. I'll just highlight a few things that I'm appreciate seeing in the document and are of importance to me. So recruiting the best people is obviously important, but retaining them and creating a positive work environment is as important, if not more important. So you've identified a number of objectives or actions in that regard. I'm very happy to see that. The whole modernization of the organization and the use of technology you've touched upon, which is good. Para-transpo service, you've touched upon potential night service or overnight service, and the ability for people to book same day trips. We've heard this over and over again. So it's hard to estimate the demand, but we know that at least some folks have been asking for this. So a pilot or something we'd like to see. And you've touched upon service reliability as a main objective, which has to be, if people can't get from their local community on their local bus to the transitway or LRT station, they're not going to use it. And this has to be a major focus for us. So I'm not going to go through the whole report. Those are some main concerns that my residents have raised over and over again, and strongly support the 5-year plan you've provided us today. Thank you.
Councillor Tierney.
Great. I'm nervous to say, but I believe this is probably one of the best meetings we've had of this commission in years. There's actually a plan. There's actually go forward movements and a different model between all presentations today. I'm really happy and thankful for your team, Renee. You do a terrific job. I have many operators that live in my ward. This will, to echo many points, this will improve morale. It's going to show that we have some leadership within our transit department, and we want to make sure that we grow our system. I just have one question because it's just in the back of my head. I always keep asking all the time. Stage 2 light rail is coming down the pipe. And do we have a sense of when we're going to start consulting, knowing that it's going to go into full operation in 2024 within this plan, when we're going to do public consultations on that? I know some previous administrators didn't like the term, but it's a great term, spoken hub, where you're going to have your bus showing up on time, every time, because it's literally doing circles to stations like Montreal and all the ones out to Trim. Do we know when that's going to be in there? Do you have enough resources? I just want to make sure we're ready to go and start talking to the public in 2023 or early 2024. I'm just trying to find the guidance on that.
Chair, thank you. Thank you for the question. I will turn over to Pat, but I want to take the opportunity to say a huge thank you to you. I was nervous because I knew that it was a good thing to do, but I didn't know how you will receive it. And the way that you receive that document is very, very important for me, because this is a teamwork. It's not just Renee Amilcar. It's really my team and bus drivers, mechanics, program manager, directors, all of them has been involved. And for me, it's the key. So thank you so much to appreciate it, because they can be proud. So Pat, can you answer to Councillor Tierney questions, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. As you may have seen, I know it went by quickly on the screen, but one of the 22 strategic initiatives in the roadmap is the route review. And knowing that was an important task, that's been underway for several months now. We had public meetings across the city. We had 4 public meetings. We've had 6,000, I believe, responses to the survey that was available online. We've got analysts both tabulating the results of that survey and providing what the indications from the survey and from the consultation sessions are towards the route planning. How do we value the different things? How do we value waiting time, travel time, reliability, and where, where do we invest first? So that's what's behind the route review, and the output of the route review is intended to address two particular, excuse me, two primary changes in the transit network, and one is the results, the continuing effects, other than my cough, of the COVID pandemic, and the forthcoming opening of the sort of 3, but really 5 extensions of the O train network. The first of those coming online is lines 2 and 4 to the south later this year. And we talked a little bit at 2 meetings ago of the light rail subcommittee of how we'll do an interim route change there. But the longer term route change to go into place next spring is really coming out of the route review and the consultation, the next phase of consultation that will follow. The next task after that will be to talk to the people in the east about the bus route change that should be that ought to be made to knit everyone well into the O train extension, and then the third one after that will be the 2 extensions to the west, to Moody and to Algonquin. So that work continues, and all of the consultation that Councillor Tierney mentions is all built into that plan. It just has to. We just have to continue to roll.
And thank you for that, Pat. And the staff did a terrific job in the East. As you know, I was there fielding questions. It was a great conversation. What I'm starting to get from people now is, okay, what's this new route going to look like? Like Route 224 doesn't need to go to Blair anymore. It's going to go to Montreal. So when are we going to actually see some of those as councillors, what those new routes look like prior to the public? I assume we'll get a copy and provide feedback and do that kind of stuff. I'm just looking for a simple answer. Is it fall 2023? Is it summer 2024? Like, I'm just trying to gauge it.
I would say it's likely to be late this year, going into the beginning of next year, for your area, Councillor Tierney, and the other Eastern councillors. But yes, we'll be coming to see the councillors in plenty of time to get all of your guidance and feedback.
Awesome. And again, thank you to the entire team. Terrific meeting today. I'm so proud of the team here at OC Transpo. Marty, stop chewing on your pen. All right. Bye.
Thanks, Councillor Tierney. I just want to pick up on a few things that have come up in this discussion. On demand, if anyone gets a chance, listen to Councillor Lowe's interview on CBC this morning about on-demand transit. It's very well done, very informative. Councillor Lowe, that's you, yes. And you know what, the delegation raised some good questions, and there are many different models of on-demand transit. And I think the pilot will help us identify where we should be going, but a lot of it depends on what we're trying to accomplish. There's one in Quebec City, a pilot that launched, and they focus it on modal shift for short trips between 2 and 5 kilometers. So a little in the suburbs, so a little too far to walk, but 2 to 5 kilometers is really hard to service in suburbs because of the lower density and lower ridership. And they've had some really good initial results in getting more people using transit for those kind of trips in suburban areas. I think in our case, we have some concerns about financial viability of the traditional suburban routes. So we're going to try something different and see if we can run a more efficient system. And I agree with some of my colleagues around this. It's great to see a forward-thinking plan. I think Councillor Lowe mentioned embracing a new reality. I hope at some point soon we can get away from looking at where we compared to pre-pandemic and just accept that we are in a new reality. We don't, at some point, we're going to have to stop comparing to where we were in 2019 and really focus on what the ridership is now and where those ridership needs might be going. And perhaps as part of our budget this year, we can start to take a different look. Now, I did wanted to ask staff to comment on one thing that was in the staff report. And I think it's perhaps a warning to us as councillors, commissioners. It says the current model is no longer financially sustainable. And I want to give staff an opportunity maybe to talk a little bit about what that means and, how that might affect our planning going forward.
Great, Chair. La première chose qu'on doit comprendre, c'est que
the first thing to understand is that the Ottawa model was built to meet a constant increase in ridership. And normally, when you create heavy modes, it's because we want to bring a lot of people in a short period of time at a specific site, which is downtown. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, we realized that the majority of employees coming to the downtown area were from the federal. And now we know that these employees will be coming 2 days max back to the downtown. There's a lot of traffic right now. It means that people are in their cars and not in transit. So we have to reshuffle the deck and say that now that we have these assets that are really precious, how can we use them? Because the cost to use these assets as opposed to the model we had before is totally different. Yet it's a beautiful legacy because it means that Ottawa will be ready as a city, ready to greet eventually a lot more people. But we have to go through this transition period. And this is why we'll be working with colleagues, with you, of course, and propose a model that will ensure that we can go from the current period of uncertainty toward a little more difficult period, but where we will still need to be proud of our transit system that will be well established. When it is completed, we'll have the buses, we'll have the electric system. So we have to rethink how we can survive the modified model so that in 5 or 10 years, we can embrace the assets that we have in place now. Thank you, René.
So I think Finance Committee this fall. So that's going to be an important one, important report that we'll be considering. I was glad to see also in the report specifically the strategy around stronger relationships with other levels of government. I think that's incredibly important given the overall financial context. OC Transpo has a lot of big things happening. It's a very ambitious organization. We've got smart card readers launching this summer, festival and event season coming up. So perhaps many new riders trying out the system. We heard about in the last meeting, the upgrades to GPS and data. We have electric bus transition. We have route optimization. We have construction of 44 kilometers of rail, and all this while operating 7 days a week. Like, this is a very active and ambitious system, and it's going to be, despite challenges, I think a very exciting 5 years ahead for where this plan is focused. So thank you for bringing it to committee today. Is this report received? Received. Thank you. We have no in-camera items. Are there any notices of motion? And inquiries? We have an inquiry from Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. In the 2022 report on the Fraud and Waste Hotline shared with the Audit Committee on the 9th of June 2023, the Auditor General noted 1,187 additional reports of a similar nature that were submitted, all related to alleged non-compliance with the Highway Traffic Act, the HTA, by OC Transpo operators. As a result of these numerous reports and allegations, the Office of the Auditor General, the OAG, conducted a limited review of OC Transpo bus operator compliance with regulations, which was tabled at the Audit Committee in June 2022. The OAG have since been working with OC Transpo management to obtain status updates on how they are addressing the issues raised in the report. So the questions of 1, please describe the policy and procedures, including training programs in place to ensure OC Transpo operators, including maintenance employees who need to operate transit vehicles when required, comply with the HTA as well as standard operating procedures, the SOPs. Please describe the compliance surveillance programs or procedures OC Transpo has to ensure compliance with the HTA and its SOPs. What challenges are there to ensuring adequate monitoring? How often does OC Transpo review its SOPs and training programs to help ensure employees comply with the HDA? What actions has OC Transpo undertaken so far in response to the OEG's limited review of OC Transpo's operator compliance with regulations? What tools do passengers and the general public have to report HDA and SOP non-compliance by OC Transpo employees? What tools do employees have to report HDA and SOP non-compliance by other employees? And finally, has the increase in fraud and waste hotline calls resulted in a decrease in passengers, the general public, or employees using other tools, the other tools mentioned in questions 6 and 7?
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Are there any other inquiries? I don't think so. And there's no other business that I'm aware of. Our next meeting is September 14th, 2023, and we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.